As the night settles in, so can you. Let us know in the comments, where are you listening this and what is your current time. After that, close your eyes if you like. Nothing we're about to discuss is urgent or even particularly interesting. And let us begin. So, you're a 6th century human just trying to get by, and suddenly, it's like Mother Nature decided to pull a massive prank on you. Welcome to the year 536, the year that historians have lovingly dubbed the worst year to be alive. You're probably wondering what on earth could have happened to earn such a dubious title. Well, buckle up because it's a wild ride involving volcanic eruptions, global climate catastrophe, and a whole lot of hungry people. First, let's talk sky business. It's early in the year, and you notice something's off. The sun, that big ball of fire you rely on for warmth and food, decides to play a disappearing act. The sky's gone all Instagram filter on you, like some cosmic sepia tone. But trust me, there's nothing stylish about it. This is thanks to a massive volcanic eruption somewhere in the northern hemisphere, exact location still up for debate, but suspects include Iceland and North America. This bad boy spewed ash and debris high into the stratosphere, creating a veil of doom that blocked sunlight across the globe. Now, if you think a little darkness just means an extended winter, think again. The Byzantine historian Procopius, who was apparently the original doom-scrolling chronicler, described the sun as giving forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during the whole year. And it wasn't just a dim day, this was a full-on year without a summer. Temperatures dropped by as much as 2.5 degrees Celsius, or around 36.5 degrees Celsius for my Fahrenheit friends across the globe. That might not sound like much, but in the pre-industrial world, this was the equivalent of the universe flipping the thermostat to Arctic blast. And the effects? Oh boy, did they cascade. With the chillier climate, crops started playing the world's worst version of hide-and-seek. Wheat fields, barley, and other staples you depend on were like, nope, not growing this year. Agricultural production took a nosedive, and with it, the food supply. The global economy of the time wasn't exactly built to handle such a shock. Picture this. You're trying to feed a population with a pantry that's suddenly running on fumes. If you think supermarket panic buying is bad, imagine what happens when the shelves are permanently empty. The domino effect of this agricultural apocalypse was brutal. Famine spread faster than gossip at a Roman bathhouse. People were left scrambling for anything edible. Even those with hefty coin purses found that money couldn't buy what simply wasn't there. And with starvation came its equally nasty cousin, disease. Malnourished bodies are prime real estate for pathogens, and soon enough, pestilence was making house calls throughout Europe and Asia. It wasn't just the common folk feeling the pinch. This catastrophe had kings and emperors sweating. The Byzantine Empire, for instance, was in the middle of trying to reclaim the glory days of the Roman Empire under Emperor Justinian. But you know what doesn't help imperial conquests? A population too hungry to fight and too sick to care. As the empire's coffers started to run dry, the political landscape got shakier than a jelly dessert. Yet, amidst all this turmoil, some folks got creative. You had to be, right? When the usual crops failed, people turned to whatever they could find. In Ireland, they were reportedly eating nettles and other wild plants. Yeah, nettles. Those things that sting you when you accidentally brush against them. Desperate times and all that. But let's not romanticize the resilience too much. There's only so much stinging plant cuisine one can endure. The year 536 set the stage for a decade of hardship with recurring waves of famine and disease. It took years for societies to claw their way back to any semblance of stability. And while we can't blame everything on one volcanic eruption, it sure did one heck of a job setting off a chain reaction that made life utterly miserable. So, there you have it. A year when the sun went AWOL, the crops followed suit, and humanity faced the kind of existential crisis that makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, you should have been born in a different century. But hey, at least you weren't stuck binging medieval Netflix during lockdown. Silver linings, right? And speaking of silver linings, let's dive deeper into the murky waters of 506's economic chaos. If you thought the crop failures were just a blip on the radar, think again. This was no ordinary agricultural hiccup. It was like the world's worst pop quiz, and nobody had studied. Grain was the backbone of the economy back then. Think wheat, barley, rye. You know, the stuff that makes bread, beer, and basically life worth living in the Dark Ages. When these crops failed spectacularly, it wasn't just the farmers who felt the pinch. This was a global supply chain collapse before supply chain was even a concept. Picture this. You're a peasant who relied on your yearly harvest to pay taxes, trade goods and, oh yeah, feed your family. But now, your fields are as barren as your cousin's dating life, and it's not just your problem, it's everyone's. This catastrophic failure meant that what little grain was available skyrocketed in price faster than concert tickets for a Taylor Swift tour. Inflation hit like a medieval sledgehammer. And unlike today, where central banks might step in to tweak interest rates, the 6th century economy had no such safety nets. It was pure survival of the fittest or the richest. As for trade, well, that went down like a lead balloon. With food in short supply, the usual exchange of goods across regions took a nosedive. Silk from China? Forget about it. Olive oil from the Mediterranean? Dream on. Even the most essential goods were subject to the whims of nature's cruel joke. Trade networks that had once been the veins of medieval commerce dried up, leaving societies isolated and vulnerable. The economic fallout was a grim reminder of how interconnected the world was, even then. Now, let's talk about the ripple effects. With inflation running rampant and trade networks collapsing, local markets became battlegrounds. People hoarded whatever they could get their hands on, leading to scarcity and even more inflated prices. Sound familiar? It's like the medieval version of toilet paper hoarding, but with way higher stakes. Social tensions rose faster than sourdough starters during lockdown, leading to unrest and, in some cases, outright violence. Communities that once thrived on cooperation found themselves tearing apart at the seams. But it wasn't just the common folks who suffered. Oh no, the upper crust got their comeuppance too. You see, wealth in this era wasn't measured by fancy yachts or NFT collections, but by land and the ability to produce food from it. So when the crops failed, even the rich found their assets about as useful as a chocolate teapot. Estates that had been passed down through generations became liabilities. Landowners faced a harsh new reality where their noble titles couldn't conjure up a loaf of bread. Let's not ignore the political shenanigans either. When people are starving, they tend to get a bit cranky about paying taxes, and rulers, desperate to keep their thrones, often had to scramble to maintain order. In some cases, this meant cutting taxes or providing relief, a medieval stimulus package of sorts. But with the coffers running low, these measures were about as effective as using a sieve to carry water. Now, if all this sounds a bit like a dystopian novel, that's because it kind of was. The year 536 was a harsh teacher, showing us that when the economy takes a hit, society's fabric can unravel with alarming speed. And while we like to think we're more sophisticated today, the echoes of 536 remind us that the fundamental challenges of climate, economy, and social order are perennial. So, the next time you hear someone wax poetic about the simplicity of medieval life, just remember the reality was a little more Game of Thrones and a little less Renaissance fair. We've always been at the mercy of nature, and whether it's a volcanic eruption or a modern-day supply chain hiccup, the challenges remain eerily similar. But fear not, because we're not done yet. There's more to uncover about this tumultuous time and how humanity clawed its way back from the brink. Stay with me as we continue to unravel the tangled web of history, because if there's one thing the past teaches us, it's that every disaster is just the opening act for an even bigger story. So, where were we? Ah yes, unraveling the chaos of 536. As if the economic meltdown wasn't enough, the geopolitical landscape turned into a veritable festival of instability. If you thought today's political maneuvering was a tangled web, welcome to the 6th century edition of Who Wants to Be an Emperor, where the stakes are as high as the Byzantine Empire's ambitions and the rules. Well, they're as flexible as a Roman toga. Let's kick things off with the Byzantine Empire, the heavyweight champion of the Mediterranean, under the rule of Emperor Justinian I first. Now, Justinian had big dreams. Think of him as the 6th century version of a startup founder, except instead of creating an app, he was all about restoring the glory of Rome. His grand plan to reconquer lost territories was underway when 536 decided to throw a spanner the size of Europe into the works. Imagine trying to expand your empire while your subjects are too busy trying to figure out where their next meal is coming from. Not exactly the recipe for imperial success. The political instability across the empire was as pervasive as the infamous Byzantine bureaucracy. With resources dwindling, maintaining control over the sprawling territories became a Herculean task. The empire stretched from the western Mediterranean to the Middle East, but with famine and disease thinning the ranks, Justinian's armies were more like a shadow of their former might. Picture a general trying to rally his troops when half of them are too weak to hold a sword. Not a great look for a military campaign, but Justinian wasn't the type to throw in the towel. Desperate times call for desperate diplomacy, and the Byzantine court was a hotbed of intrigue and alliances, where shifting loyalties were as common as the emperor's changing wardrobe. In an era where treaties were about as stable as a Jenga tower in an earthquake, Justinian's envoys scurried across Europe and Asia, trying to cobble together alliances that could bolster the empire's flagging fortunes. Spoiler alert, it was a bit like herding cats. Meanwhile, the geopolitical mess wasn't confined to the Byzantine Empire. Across Europe, opportunistic conflicts sprang up like mushrooms after a rainstorm. With the central authority weakened, regional leaders saw their chance to grab a slice of the power pie. The Franks, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, everyone was getting in on the action, each with their own brand of medieval power play. And who could blame them? In a crisis, even the smallest advantage could be the difference between survival and obscurity. Let's take a closer look at the Ostrogoths in Italy, for example. This kingdom, under King Theodahad, was supposed to be a client state under Byzantine influence. But with Justinian's attention divided and resources stretched thinner than a Roman pizza, Theodahad saw an opportunity to assert independence. The Gothic War that followed was a bloody affair, characterized by sieges and betrayals that would make a soap opera writer blush. It was a classic case of, when the cat's away, the mice will play, except these mice had swords and a penchant for political intrigue. And speaking of intrigue, let's not forget about the Sasanian Empire to the east. While Justinian was juggling crises, the Persians were eyeing their Byzantine neighbours with the keen interest of a hawk spotting an injured rabbit. The Sasanian king, Khosrow I, known as Anushiru I, or the Immortal Soul, was no slouch when it came to exploiting weakness. The Byzantine-Sasanian frontier was a simmering cauldron of tension, and the volcanic ash cloud of 536 only served to stoke the fires of conflict. It was a classic case of geopolitical opportunism, with Khosrow pressing his advantages whenever possible. But let's not romanticize these war games. While the leaders played their high-stakes chess, the common folk were the pawns, often caught in the crossfire of their rulers' ambitions. These conflicts weren't fought with precision-guided missiles, but with swords, spears, and an alarming disregard for collateral damage. If you were a farmer in Italy or a merchant in Persia, your livelihood could be upended faster than a Byzantine court scandal. Now, amidst all this chaos, one might wonder if there were any attempts at peace. After all, even the most hardened warrior gets tired of constant battle. And there were indeed efforts to broker truces and negotiate settlements. The Byzantine and Sasanian empires, for instance, occasionally paused their hostilities to sign treaties. But these were often as reliable as a 6th century weather forecast. The peace treaties were frequently little more than a temporary lull in hostilities, the ink often drying just in time for the next round of conflict. In the end, the year 536 wasn't just a trial by nature, but a testament to the resilience and folly of human ambition. The political landscape was a testament to the idea that history isn't just shaped by grand events, but by the myriad decisions of individuals, each acting in their perceived best interest. As leaders tried to navigate the rocky waters of diplomacy and conflict, they were reminded time and again that in the Game of Thrones you either win or, well, you know the rest. So, as we take a breather from this whirlwind of geopolitical drama, remember, the past isn't just a tale of kings and empires, but a mirror reflecting the complexities of human nature. And just like in 536, today's leaders grapple with crises, trying to balance ambition with pragmatism. The stage is set for more stories from this tumultuous time, so stick around as we continue to explore the fascinating tapestry of history. There's plenty more chaos, intrigue, and resilience to uncover. As the dust of geopolitical chessmen settles, let's zoom in on the nitty-gritty of everyday life in 536, because if you think modern life is tough, try surviving when even Mother Nature seems to have a grudge against you. We're talking about a time when social and cultural structures were as precarious as a tightrope walker in a windstorm. Sure, it's easy to wax poetic about the medieval resilience, but in reality, it was less about stoic endurance and more about sheer, desperate survival. Imagine being an ordinary person in a small village where the air is thick with volcanic ash, and the sun is as shy as a first-time speaker at a medieval open mic night. You're not just dealing with a bad harvest, you're staring down the barrel of widespread famine. Malnutrition has turned your neighbours into a shadow of their former selves, and it's only a matter of time before disease waltzes in, uninvited yet all too familiar. Enter the Justinianic plague, yes, like a bad sequel to the worst year ever. In 541, just when folks thought things couldn't get worse, bubonic plague decided to join the party. Imagine the horror. The plague rips through communities with the efficiency of a medieval Amazon delivery, leaving devastation in its wake. Historian Procopius, our go-to guy for 6th century despair, described bodies piling up faster than the Byzantine Empire could manage. It's estimated that the plague decimated up to 50% of Europe's population, a deadly encore to the volcanic disruption. Now, let's pause for a moment to dismantle this whole medieval resilience myth. Sure, people found ways to cope, but it wasn't all gallant knights and stoic peasants. The reality was more like a medieval version of a survival reality show, where the challenges were persistent and the stakes were life or death. Communities turned to some rather inventive, albeit grim, survival strategies. In Ireland, they reportedly consumed a diet of nettles and other wild plants. Yes, those stinging nettles, because when you're desperate, even a painful salad is better than nothing. But let's not romanticize this as a testament to the indomitable human spirit. Eating nettles wasn't a quaint return to nature, it was a last-ditch effort to stave off starvation. This wasn't resilience, it was survival, plain and simple. A grim reminder that when the chips are down, necessity doesn't just mother invention, it demands it with a side of, or else. Disease outbreaks, fueled by malnutrition, were rampant. The social fabric of communities was frayed as people became increasingly isolated in this struggle to survive. Social gatherings became potential death traps, and the once bustling marketplaces were eerily silent. The cultural impact was profound. Traditions, festivals, and communal activities. Those things that knit the social tapestry fell by the wayside, replaced by a focus on mere existence. Yet, even amid the gloom, snippets of humanity shone through, their accounts of communities banding together, pooling whatever meagre resources they could muster. It's the medieval version of a potluck, except instead of casseroles and cookies, you've got a hodgepodge of whatever scraps folks could gather. Not exactly the stuff of epic tales, but a testament to the small acts of solidarity that kept the human spirit flickering. As we dig into the primary sources, the picture becomes clearer. Chroniclers like John of Ephesus give us glimpses into the despair that permeated society. He wrote of cities abandoned, fields left untended, and a sense of hopelessness that hung heavier than the volcanic ash. It's easy to gloss over these accounts, but they serve as stark reminders of the harsh realities faced by ordinary people. The idea that medieval folk were unflinchingly resilient is a romantic notion that crumbles under the weight of historical evidence. And let's not forget the psychological toll. Living in a world where nature seems to have flipped the script from provider to punisher would wear down even the most steadfast soul. Imagine waking up each day unsure if you'd find enough food or if disease would claim another loved one. It's the kind of existential dread that even the most stoic knight couldn't armour against. In the face of such adversity, it's no wonder some turned to religion for solace. The Church, with its promise of an afterlife, offered a form of hope, however intangible. But even faith was tested. The clergy, often seen as intermediaries between the divine and the mundane, were just as susceptible to plague and famine. Monasteries, which had once been centres of learning and stability, struggled to maintain their roles as both spiritual and physical refuges. Yet, amid the despair, there were moments of ingenuity. Some communities, recognizing the futility of traditional agriculture in the face of climate chaos, began experimenting with new crops and farming techniques. It's a testament to human adaptability, albeit born from desperation. In Scandinavia, for instance, barley, a hardy grain, became a staple, its resilience to harsh conditions offering a lifeline to beleaguered farmers. But adaptability couldn't shield everyone. The stark divide between those who could pivot and those who couldn't became glaringly apparent. Class lines hardened as the wealthy, with their resources and connections, fared better than the impoverished masses. It's a tale as old as time. When disaster strikes, those with means find ways to cushion the blow, while the less fortunate bear the brunt. As we peel back the layers of 536's social and cultural impacts, it's clear that this period was more than a footnote in history. It was a crucible that tested the mettle of societies and individuals alike. The romantic notion of medieval resilience, when confronted with the harsh realities, is revealed as a tapestry of desperation, creativity, and, at times, grim acceptance. Yet, history isn't just about the grand narratives. It's also about the countless untold stories of those who endured without fanfare, the farmers who toiled against impossible odds, the families who clung together in the face of unimaginable hardship, the communities that found strength in unity, all contribute to the rich, albeit sombre, mosaic of this era. And so, as we wrap up this chapter, let's keep in mind that while the year 536 was a bleak interlude in the symphony of history, it also set the stage for the resilience and rebirth that would eventually follow. Stay tuned, because there's more to uncover in this saga of survival, desperation, and the slow, arduous climb back to stability. So, as we wrap up this chapter, let's keep in mind that while the year 536 was a bleak interlude in the symphony of history, it also set the stage for the resilience and rebirth that would eventually follow. Now, you might be wondering, how does a year that sounds like a plot point in some grim fantasy epic leave a lasting impact? Well, let's dive into the long-term consequences of this apocalyptic episode. First up, let's talk about the Byzantines, those tenacious empire builders who refused to let a little thing like global catastrophe derail their imperial ambitions. Despite the enormity of the challenges, Emperor Justinian I and his successors managed to claw their way back onto the geopolitical stage. You see, the sheer scale of the disaster forced the empire to innovate. With traditional agriculture in disarray, the Byzantines had to get creative. They began to diversify their crops and improve agricultural practices which, over time, helped stabilize the food supply. And with stability came the gradual recovery of the empire's economic and military might. But it wasn't just about crop rotation and better ploughs. The chaos of 536 also nudged the Byzantines into developing more sophisticated systems of governance and trade. Faced with a fragmented world, the Byzantines expanded their diplomatic networks, creating alliances that would bolster their empire for centuries. Justinian's famous Corpus Juris Civilis, or body of civil law, was part of this broader effort to consolidate and strengthen the empire's internal structure. This legal code laid the groundwork for modern civil law systems around the world, an unexpected silver lining from a year that seemed all about gloom. Now, let's pivot to Europe, where the aftermath of 536 set off a domino effect that would eventually lead to the medieval blossoming of the Carolingian Renaissance. The Frankish kingdoms, with their patchwork of fiefdoms and baronies, were forced to adapt to the harsh new realities or face extinction. In response, leaders like Charlemagne, coming a couple of centuries later, would build on these lessons, unifying territories and fostering a cultural and intellectual revival. It's a classic case of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or at least more organized. As for the Ostrogoths, Visigoths, and other Germanic tribes, the crises of 536 accelerated their integration into the broader tapestry of European civilization. The challenges of survival and adaptation pushed these groups toward more centralized forms of governance, laying the groundwork for the modern nation-state. It's a bit like watching your favorite band go from underground gigs to selling out arenas. They had to evolve or risk fading into obscurity. But let's not get carried away with the notion that everything worked out just peachy. The long shadow of 536 also carried with it lessons about human hubris and the fragile nature of civilization. It showed that even the most powerful empires and societies are vulnerable to the whims of nature. This humbling realization would echo down through history, influencing everything from medieval scholarship on natural disasters to the modern environmental movement. In the realm of science and technology, the aftermath of the 536 catastrophe spurred a deeper curiosity about the natural world. People began to pay more attention to the climate and its patterns, leading to the early inklings of meteorology. While we can't credit the medieval mind with inventing the weather app, The seeds of understanding and forecasting climate phenomena were sown in these dark times. It's a reminder that adversity often breeds innovation, a theme that resonates throughout history. Fast forward to today, and the events of 536 still hold a mirror up to our modern world. The idea of a worst year ever is as relevant now as it was then. Whether it's climate change, pandemics, or economic upheavals, the challenges we face echo those of our medieval forebears. Yet, the resilience demonstrated by those who lived through 536 offers a glimmer of hope. They endured, adapted, and, eventually, thrived. And if they could weather such a storm, perhaps we can too. So, the next time you're feeling overwhelmed by the chaos of the world, take a moment to consider the lessons of 536. It's a testament to the indomitable human spirit and a reminder that history, with all its messiness, is a guidebook for navigating the present. As we continue to grapple with our own challenges, let's draw inspiration from those who came before us, recognizing that every disaster holds the potential for rebirth and renewal. In the end, the story of 536 is more than just a cautionary tale. It's a narrative of resilience, adaptation, and, above all, human tenacity. While the year itself may have been a nightmare, the legacy it left behind is a testament to the enduring capacity of societies to bounce back. So, as we close the book on this turbulent chapter, let's carry forward the lessons learned. Because if there's one thing history teaches us, it's that the story is never truly over. In the bustling heart of medieval China, long before smartphones and selfies, there was another kind of technological marvel that set the world alight: Tang Dynasty porcelain. Now, if you're wondering why ancient pottery is the medieval equivalent of a shiny new iPhone, hang tight. This story has all the elements of a good drama, with a bit of chemistry and some economic upheaval thrown in for good measure. Let's talk about the Tang Dynasty, which kicked off in 6118 AD and lasted until 907 AD. This era was the golden age of Chinese civilization, marked by incredible advancements in art, culture, and technology. It was like the Silicon Valley of its time, but with a lot more silk robes and significantly fewer hoodie-wearing code monkeys. Among its many innovations, one stood out: the creation of porcelain. Not just any porcelain, mind you, but a type so fine and translucent it made other ceramics look like caveman clay. The secret sauce behind this porcelain was kaolin, a type of clay that was as elusive as a unicorn in medieval China. Mixed with patunci, also known as China stone, this dynamic duo was subjected to temperatures of around 1,300 degrees Celsius in kilns hot enough to roast a dragon. The result? A material so smooth and white it could rival the moonlight itself. The translucency of finished Tang porcelain was so remarkable it seemed to let light dance through it, much like the way a modern LED screen mesmerizes us today. But why was this such a big deal? Well, imagine a world where the most common materials for drinking vessels were either metal, which could leave your tea tasting like a blacksmith's workshop, or earthenware, which was about as delicate as a brick. Porcelain was not only beautiful, but practical, resistant to heat and impervious to liquids. It was the ultimate status symbol, a must-have for anyone who was anyone in Tang society. If you were drinking tea from porcelain, you were basically the medieval equivalent of someone texting from the latest iPhone Pro Max. With porcelain came an economic boom that would make any modern entrepreneur salivate. The demand for these wares stretched far beyond China's borders, reaching places as far-flung as the Middle East and Africa. It was the original global trade commodity, predating Black Friday sales by over a millennium. Entire towns sprang up around the production of porcelain, with kilns firing day and night to keep up with the insatiable demand. The economic impact was staggering. By some estimates, porcelain production contributed as much as 10% to the Tang Dynasty's GDP. Now, that's what you call a cash cow, or perhaps a cash clay. And who were the masterminds behind this ceramic revolution? The artisans, of course. These craftsmen were the rock stars of their time, minus the leather pants and world tours, but with plenty of fame. They honed their skills through rigorous apprenticeship programs, often starting as mere children. Their expertise in mixing clays, controlling kiln temperatures, and perfecting glazes was revered across the empire. In an era where most people never travelled beyond their village, these artisans were celebrated figures. their reputations spanning continents as their wares were traded far and wide. But let's not romanticize this too much. The life of a porcelain artisan was no fairy tale. It was grueling work, often carried out in stifling heat and under immense pressure to produce goods that were both flawless and plentiful. One wrong move, one slight miscalculation in the glaze, and months of labour could be reduced to shards of shattered dreams. Despite these challenges, or perhaps because of them, the artisans persevered, driven by a mix of pride, necessity, and the tantalizing promise of fame. So, there you have it. Tang Dynasty porcelain wasn't just about pretty plates and cups. It was a technological tour de force that reshaped economies, elevated artisans to celebrity status, and spread Chinese influence across the globe. In many ways, it laid the groundwork for the modern world, proving that sometimes the most revolutionary advances come not from what we hold in our hands, but from what we drink from them. But hold that thought, because this story's just warming up, and there's plenty more porcelain to pour over. While we're still marvelling at the Tang artisan's ability to turn mud into moonlight, let's follow this porcelain on its epic journey down the Silk Road, a route that was less a highway and more a patchwork of trails, with about as much glamour as a modern-day layover in a budget airline terminal. The Silk Road, a misnomer if ever there was one, wasn't just about silk. It was a bustling marketplace of cultures, ideas, and goods, with porcelain emerging as one of its most sought-after commodities. Picture this, it's the 8th century, and Tang porcelain is the medieval equivalent of a viral TikTok trend. It's not just the Chinese elite who are enamored. Merchants from Persia, the Middle East, and even the distant shores of Africa are clamoring for a piece of this shiny white status symbol. But before you start imagining silk-clad merchants gracefully gliding over sand dunes, let's get real. These traders were not exactly the cover models for a travel magazine. They were more like the long-haul truckers of their day, braving treacherous terrains, bandits and sandstorms, not to mention the occasional dodgy inn with questionable food. The journey from China to Persia was no short hop. We're talking about a trek of over 7,000 kilometers, roughly the distance from New York to Los Angeles and back, and porcelain, unlike its more robust cousin silk, was fragile. Transporting it involved wrapping it in layers of straw and packing it tightly in crates that were then loaded onto the backs of camels. It was a camel's version of Jenga, where one wrong move could send the entire cargo crashing down, not exactly the kind of stress-free logistics we'd expect from a modern-day Amazon delivery. But why go through all this hassle for porcelain? Simple. It was worth its weight in gold, literally. In Persia, a single piece of Tang porcelain could command prices that would make even the most extravagant NFT look like pocket change. This wasn't just about having a pretty plate to display, it was about prestige, a tangible proof of one's wealth and sophistication. In a world where power was as much about perception as reality, owning Tang porcelain was like having a blue checkmark on your Twitter profile, but with far more heft and a lot more shine. Speaking of shine, let's not forget the role of the Abbasid Caliphate. Centered in Baghdad, this caliphate was a major player in the global trade network of the time, and its love affair with Tang porcelain was legendary. The Abbasids, known for their opulent courts and grandiose displays of wealth, saw Chinese porcelain as the ultimate tableware for their lavish feasts. This wasn't just dinner, it was diplomacy, served on a platter of the finest porcelain. The Abbasid caliphs, ever the trendsetters, helped cement porcelain's status as the must-have luxury item of the medieval world. Now, let's address the myth of the Silk Road being a single uninterrupted route. In reality, it was a network of interlinking pathways, each with its own set of challenges. From the snow-capped peaks of the Pamirs to the scorching sands of the Taklamakan Desert, whose name, by the way, ominously means, "Go in and you won't come out." Traders faced a gauntlet of natural obstacles. And as if nature weren't enough, there were also the human hazards, bandits who viewed these merchants as walking treasure chests. It was the Wild West meets Lawrence of Arabia, with a side of Marco Polo. But let's not get too carried away with the romance of it all. The life of a trader was as much about survival as it was about profit. Long before the invention of frequent flyer miles and duty-free shopping, these merchants lugged their precious cargo over unforgiving landscapes, driven by the promise of wealth and the hope that they wouldn't end up as a cautionary tale told over a campfire. It was a risky business, but one that paid off handsomely for those who managed to make it through unscathed. So, what did all this mean for China? In short, it was a game changer. The export of porcelain not only filled the Tang coffers, but also positioned China as a global economic powerhouse. The porcelain trade was a precursor to the global supply chains we see today, with China at its center long before the days of Made in China labels. This was soft power in its purest form, a cultural diffusion that spread the influence of the Tang Dynasty far beyond its borders. As Tang porcelain made its way to distant lands, it did more than just adorn tables, it sparked innovation. Inspired by the Chinese techniques, Persian artisans began experimenting with their own glazes and kilns, leading to the development of lusterware, a shimmering ceramic that captured the opulence of the Abbasid court. It was the medieval version of anything you can do, I can do better, or at least I can do differently. In Africa, particularly along the Swahili coast, Tang porcelain shards have been unearthed in archaeological digs, testament to the far-reaching tentacles of this trade network. These shards are more than just broken pieces of history. They are clues to a vibrant exchange of goods and cultures, a global tapestry woven with threads of trade that stretched across continents. It's a reminder that globalization didn't start with the internet. It began with the clink of porcelain cups over diplomatic dinners and the quiet prestige of a well-laid table. So, the next time you sip your morning coffee from a porcelain mug, spare a thought for the Tang artisans and the intrepid traders who turned a humble clay cup into a symbol of global commerce. This is just the beginning of our story, so stay tuned as we continue to unravel the fascinating legacy of Tang Dynasty porcelain. There's plenty more to explore, from its role in shaping international trade to its lasting impact on art and culture worldwide. The journey is far from over, and just like those traders, we've got a long road ahead. As we continue our stroll through the corridors of history, let's pivot from the treacherous Silk Road to the bustling banquet halls and humble homes of Tang Dynasty China. Porcelain. There wasn't just a pretty face, it was the social media of its day, broadcasting status and taste without a single hashtag. You see, in a society as layered and hierarchical as the Tang, porcelain was the ultimate social chameleon. It could blend into the most sumptuous feasts, or stand out as a humble yet elegant piece in a commoner's abode. Imagine walking into an aristocratic banquet circa 750 AD. You're greeted by the sight of tables laden with porcelain so fine it could make a minimalist swoon. These weren't just dinner parties, they were statements. Having porcelain on your table was like having a Tesla parked in your driveway today. It screamed prestige, innovation, and a touch of eccentricity. Forget about the food, it was the tableware that stole the show. But why porcelain? Because nothing else quite said, I've arrived. Like sipping your tea from a translucent cup that had braved the kilns of Jingdezhen, the porcelain capital of the world. Now, while the upper crust was busy flaunting their porcelain as a badge of honor, the artisans behind these works were living a very different reality. The kilns were hives of precision and pressure, where every piece of porcelain was a potential masterpiece or disaster. It was a world of trial and error, where one wrong flick of the wrist could transform a priceless bowl into a pile of shards. Yet, despite the high stakes, the allure of porcelain was undeniable, spreading from palatial halls to the most modest of homes. For the common folk, owning a piece of porcelain was akin to owning a sliver of magic. Even a single cup could elevate a meal from mundane to momentous. Picture a modest family dinner, where a lone porcelain dish becomes the centerpiece, a symbol of aspiration and a connection to the grandeur of the empire. While it wasn't the everyday reality for most, even the smallest piece of porcelain allowed the average Tang citizen to partake in a bit of the empire's opulence. It was the democratization of luxury, one cup at a time. But porcelain wasn't just about setting the dinner table, it was also a pawn in the game of diplomacy. Enter the world of porcelain diplomacy, where a well-timed gift of Tang porcelain could seal alliances or smooth over diplomatic faux pas. Imagine a foreign envoy receiving a set of porcelain bowls as a gift. These weren't just tokens of goodwill, they were strategic gestures, like a diplomatic tweet with just the right amount of shade. The Chinese emperors knew that porcelain was more than just clay. It was an extension of their empire's soft power. The political impact of porcelain couldn't be understated. During the Tang Dynasty, the value placed on porcelain was such that gift-giving became an art form in itself. These weren't your average fruit baskets. They were carefully curated collections of porcelain that spoke volumes about the giver's status and intentions. An emperor might send a set of porcelain to a neighbouring ruler to cement an alliance, or perhaps as a subtle reminder of China's cultural and technological superiority. In a world where face meant everything, a gift of porcelain was the ultimate compliment, or the gentlest of slights. The allure of porcelain was irresistible, even to those who couldn't quite afford it. The booming demand for porcelain meant that counterfeiters were never far behind. These ancient knockoffs, while lacking the finesse of genuine Tang porcelain, were a testament to the material's desirability. It was the medieval version of a fake Rolex, a nod to those who aspired to the porcelain lifestyle without the accompanying price tag. And while the counterfeiters may have lacked the artistry of the true craftsman, their very existence underscored the porcelain's status as the definitive luxury item. But let's not forget the artisans themselves, the unsung heroes of this porcelain saga. Their expertise in crafting these delicate pieces was revered, yet they operated in a world where the stakes were higher than a Tang court official on payday. One misfired glaze could mean the difference between a masterpiece and the kiln's trash heap. Yet their dedication to their craft was unwavering. They were the original tastemakers, their creations shaping the social and political landscapes of the Tang dynasty. In this high-stakes Game of Thrones, porcelain was both a tool and a treasure. It was the currency of culture, a means of asserting dominance and sophistication on the global stage. As the Tang dynasty continued to flourish, porcelain became more than mere decoration. It was a badge of identity, a statement of who you were and where you stood in the social hierarchy. Whether it graced the tables of emperors or the hearths of peasants, porcelain remained a tangible link to the empire's heart, a testament to the power of art and innovation in shaping the world. So, as our journey through the Tang dynasty continues, remember that porcelain wasn't just about aesthetics, though it certainly had plenty of those. It was about influence, aspiration, and a bit of alchemical magic that turned clay into cultural capital. As we move forward, we'll explore how this legacy of porcelain diplomacy and social status continued to evolve, shaping not just China, but the entire world. The story isn't over yet, and there's plenty more porcelain to uncover. Stay tuned, because what comes next might just shatter your expectations. So, just as we're soaking in the glory of Tang porcelain's diplomatic and social prowess, let's take a detour down the less glossy alleyways of history. You see, behind every shimmering vase and delicate teacup lay a world that was anything but pristine. While we often romanticize these ancient artisans as joyful creators in a world of beauty, the reality was grubbier and much less poetic. Let's start with the working conditions. Imagine, if you will, a kiln, the heart of porcelain production running at over 1,300 degrees Celsius. That's nearly 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit for those playing along at home. It's the kind of temperature that could make the Sahara Desert feel like a cool breeze. Artisans didn't have the luxury of modern safety gear or temperature controls. It was all sweat, soot, and sheer determination. These kilns were the factories of their time, and like many factories today, they were places of relentless toil and hazardous conditions. Now, let's debunk the myth of the happy craftsman. These artisans were more akin to today's overworked and underpaid factory workers than the contented artists we imagine. Many were young apprentices, often children, who began their training by the age of 8 or 9. They worked long hours, sometimes up to 12 hours a day, and their pay? Often just enough to keep food on the table. Not quite the idyllic life of artistic fulfillment, is it? And what about the environmental impact? Kilns consumed enormous amounts of wood, leading to significant deforestation in the regions surrounding the production centres. In today's terms, imagine a factory belching smoke and devouring natural resources without a care for the carbon footprint. The environmental cost of porcelain production was a price the Tang were willing to pay for prestige, a reality as true then as it is now in many industries. As for the PR tactics, these were as slick as anything you'll find on Madison Avenue today. The Tang dynasty excelled in creating an aura of mystique around their porcelain. They marketed it as something almost magical, a product of secretive, almost alchemical processes that only the Chinese could master. This was less about the truth and more about the allure, a bit like today's artisanal labels, which often promise more than they deliver. This ancient marketing machine didn't just stop at creating a demand, it manufactured desire. The Tang didn't have Instagram influencers, but they didn't need them. Their wares spoke for themselves, and the scarcity, real or fabricated, only heightened the allure. Owning a piece of Tang porcelain wasn't just a status symbol, it was a slice of the empire's cultural superiority. Yet, behind the curtain was a workforce straining under the weight of expectation. The artisans were the unsung heroes, caught in a system that demanded perfection with little room for error. A single misstep could result in an entire batch of porcelain being trashed, turning months of labor into worthless shards. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, the pursuit of perfection became an obsession, driving innovation and creativity to new heights. Compare this to today's manufacturing challenges, and you'll find some eerie parallels. The pressures of mass production, the environmental toll, and the human cost. These are not new issues. They're simply dressed in different clothes. The Tang artisans might not have had to worry about global markets or supply chain crises, but their lives were dictated by the same relentless pace and demand for excellence. So, next time you admire a piece of Tang porcelain, think of the hands that shaped it. Hands roughened by labor, guided by skill, yet often invisible in the grand narrative of history. These artisans didn't just create objects of beauty, they crafted legacies, all while navigating a world that often valued their art more than their well-being. And as we continue this journey through the past, remember that history is rarely as polished as the porcelain it produces. The Tang dynasty's porcelain legacy is a testament to human ingenuity, but it's also a reflection of the enduring complexities of labor, art, and commerce. There's more to uncover in this saga, and while we've scratched the surface, the story of Tang porcelain and its reverberations through history is far from over. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into this fascinating tale, exploring the enduring impact and the human stories that continue to shape our world today. So, as we delve into the final chapter of our porcelain odyssey, let's take a moment to appreciate the astonishing legacy of Tang Dynasty porcelain. This humble clay transformed into an enduring symbol of art, technology, and cultural exchange. Fast forward 1,000 years, and you'll find its echoes in the bustling world of modern China, a powerhouse of cultural exports with roots as deep as the Grand Canyon. First, let's talk about the artistic legacy. Tang porcelain wasn't just a flash in the pan, it was the spark for an artistic revolution. Those translucent ceramics inspired artists and potters for centuries, from the Ming Dynasty's vibrant blue and white ware to the minimalist aesthetics of contemporary ceramics. Today, you'll find that same spirit in the work of artists who blend ancient techniques with modern flair, proving that good taste is timeless, even if it does occasionally shatter on the kitchen floor. But let's not just gaze wistfully at porcelain's past. Let's bring it into the 21st century, where the intersection of art and technology is as dynamic as a toddler with a crayon. Modern China has taken a page from the Tang playbook, turning cultural exports into a soft power strategy that rivals the influence of their Tang predecessors. Consider the global reach of Chinese films, fashion, and tech today. From the Oscar-winning films of Zhang Yimou to the worldwide phenomenon of TikTok, China's cultural exports are as ubiquitous as their porcelain once was. And speaking of technology, the Tang's legacy isn't just artistic, it's technological too. The innovative spirit that fired those ancient kilns is alive and well in today's China, a nation pushing boundaries in fields like AI, renewable energy, and biomedicine. The porcelain production of yore demanded precision and innovation, values that have carried over into contemporary technological advancements. It's as if the meticulous care once reserved for creating the perfect china cup is now applied to crafting cutting-edge smartphones and electric cars. Now, let's inject some humor into our history. While Tang porcelain has stood the test of time, let's not forget that even the finest porcelain is no match for the chaos of daily life. Anyone who's ever witnessed a toddler's tantrum knows that the fragility of porcelain is all too real. One moment, you're admiring your elegant teacup, and the next, it's a mosaic on your kitchen floor. It's a reminder that while we can marvel at the artistry and engineering, porcelain's delicate nature is both its allure and its Achilles heel. This brings us to the economic context. Porcelain wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about economics and trade. a precursor to the global supply chains we navigate today. The Tang Dynasty's porcelain trade was an ancient version of globalization and positioned China as a formidable economic force. Fast forward to today, and you'll see China at the heart of the global economy, a status that began with those gleaming porcelain wares. The porcelain trail paved the way for modern trade routes, and while the landscape has changed, the principles remain strikingly similar. So, what does this all mean for porcelain's enduring allure? It's a testament to human ingenuity, our ability to transform the mundane into the magnificent, to take a lump of clay and turn it into something that transcends time and space. Porcelain's legacy is not just in the objects themselves, but in the way they symbolize the heights of human creativity and craftsmanship. It's a reminder that art and technology, though often seen as polar opposites, are in fact two sides of the same coin. As we bring our porcelain journey to a close, let's ponder the bigger picture. The Tang Dynasty's porcelain was more than a luxury item. It was a cultural ambassador, a carrier of ideas and aesthetics that continue to shape our world. It's a story of innovation, of artisans who, despite harsh conditions, created something that would outlast empires. And it's a story of trade, of goods exchanged and cultures intertwined long before the term globalization was coined. In the end, porcelain is a microcosm of the human story, a testament to our persistent quest for beauty, our relentless pursuit of perfection, and our enduring capacity to create legacies that resonate through the ages. As we sip from our porcelain cups or admire a delicate vase, we're not just connecting with history, we're participating in it. So, the next time you admire a piece of porcelain, think about the journey it has taken, from the kilns of the Tang Dynasty to your modern-day table, and appreciate the stories it carries within its fragile yet resilient form. With that, we wrap up our porcelain saga, leaving behind the shards of history and stepping into a future where the legacy of Tang porcelain continues to inspire. Whether it's in the art we create, the technology we innovate, or the commerce we engage in, the spirit of those ancient artisans lives on, a reminder that sometimes the most enduring legacies are crafted not from the grand gestures of history, but from the delicate touch of human hands. 18 years old, barely out of the nursery, and suddenly, boom, you're the monarch of the most powerful empire in the world. That's exactly what happened to Queen Victoria in 1837. Can you believe that? 1 minute she's just another royal with a penchant for doodling and diary entries, and the next she's got the weight of an empire on her shoulders. Talk about a glow-up. Victoria's journey to the throne was as unlikely as it was dramatic. She wasn't even supposed to be queen, not really. Born in 1809, she was way down the line of succession, 5th to be precise, but thanks to a series of unfortunate events, for her relatives, not her, including the deaths of her father and 3 uncles, she found herself moving up the ranks faster than a contestant on a reality TV show. Suddenly, all eyes were on her. A young woman in a man's world with the keys to the kingdom in her hand. The day she became queen, Victoria wrote in her diary, "I will be good." Simple, right? But those 4 little words packed a punch. They became a rallying cry for a reign that would last an epic 63 years. For context, that's longer than most of us can keep a New Year's resolution. But let's not kid ourselves. Being a young queen wasn't all tiaras and tea parties. It was more like navigating a minefield of political intrigue, social upheaval, and, of course, that ever-present Victorian-era pomp and circumstance, which could make even the most seasoned courtiers cringe with its absurdity. Being young and inexperienced, Victoria's early days as queen were anything but smooth sailing. Picture this. A teenager trying to understand the intricacies of British politics while dealing with a court full of seasoned politicians who weren't exactly thrilled about taking orders from someone who was still perfecting her cursive. It was as if the British Empire had become a sitcom, with Victoria as the unlikely lead trying to keep the ship from capsizing. One of the most laughable misconceptions about Victoria was that she was a mere puppet, easily manipulated by those around her. Not quite. Sure, she had her moments of naivety, but Victoria quickly proved she had a mind of her own. In fact, she didn't waste any time asserting her authority. When her mother, the Duchess of Kent, tried to keep a tight grip on the young queen, Victoria swiftly banished her to a distant wing of the palace. There's nothing like a bit of royal family drama to spice things up, right? The political landscape she inherited was a veritable minefield, with the Whigs and Tories throwing shade at each other like it was a national sport. And here comes Victoria, trying to figure out if she was supposed to be neutral or pick a side. Spoiler alert, she wasn't so great at playing Switzerland. Her youth and enthusiasm sometimes led her to make impulsive decisions, like siding with the Whigs more often than was deemed proper. It was all very Mean Girls, with political factions vying for her attention like high school cliques. But let's not forget the absurdity of Victorian pomp. The coronation ceremony in 1838 was a spectacle that cost a whopping $79,000. That's about 10 million in today's money, all for a single day of pageantry. For comparison, that's like hosting the world's most extravagant wedding every day for a month. Yet, despite the pageantry, the event was filled with blunders. The Archbishop of Canterbury, bless his soul, put the ring on the wrong finger, and the coronation anthem was sung off-key. Imagine planning the event of the century, only to have it go down like an episode of a slapstick comedy. Despite these early missteps, Victoria's youthful energy and determination began to change the game. Her reign saw the expansion of the British Empire to almost a quarter of the world's landmass. That's right, a quarter. The sun literally never set on her empire, a testament to how her influence reshaped the world. And all of this started with an 18-year-old who was thrust into the limelight and decided she would indeed be good. Victoria's early reign was a time of transformation, not just for her, but for the entire empire. Her youth, once seen as a liability, became a symbol of renewal and progress. She had to navigate a world that was changing as rapidly as the Industrial Revolution could churn out steam engines. It's no wonder she became a cultural icon, embodying the spirit of an era that would bear her name. So, next time you think your teenage years were rough, spare a thought for Victoria. She wasn't just dealing with algebra and acne, she was running an empire, and she did it with a sense of duty and a surprising amount of wit. Her reign might have started with a diary entry and a slightly off-key anthem, but it set the stage for a legacy that would last long after her throne had been passed to another. And speaking of teenage years that felt like running an empire, let's talk about Victoria's marriage to Prince Albert in 1840, a union that was as strategic as it was romantic. Ah, young love, or should I say, young political alliance. Now, if you think Victoria was all business and no pleasure, think again. When she met her cousin Albert, yes, cousin, because royals did love keeping it in the family, she was smitten. Her diary entries practically screamed, "Crush alert." She described Albert as excessively handsome and charming, with a pleasing and delightful exterior. Who wouldn't fall for that, right? Their marriage was more than just a love match, it was a cultural phenomenon. You see, Victoria and Albert were the ultimate Victorian power couple, setting trends faster than you could say Instagram influencers. Their relationship influenced everything from fashion to architecture. For starters, Victoria practically threw the corset out the window. She opted for more comfortable clothing, a move that was revolutionary in a society where women were expected to be trussed up like Christmas turkeys. And then there was Balmoral Castle. If you ever wondered where the British obsession with country homes began, look no further. Victoria and Albert's love for the Scottish Highlands was so intense they decided to build their own personal getaway up there. Balmoral wasn't just a castle, it was a statement. A granite-clad ode to Gothic revival architecture that screamed, "Look at us, we're cultured. And let's not forget the tartan everything." Albert had a thing for plaid, and soon it was as fashionable as avocado toast is today. Now, let's get real about their domestic life, which was far from a fairy tale. Victoria had a temper that could probably melt the ice caps, while Albert was a stickler for order and loved nothing more than a good redecorating session. Imagine living in a house where one person wants to repaint the walls every other week and the other wants to keep the furniture exactly as it is. It's a wonder they didn't kill each other over wallpaper choices. But their passionate arguments and reconciliations were part of what made their marriage so relatable. They were a Victorian-era sitcom, complete with slapstick moments and heartfelt confessions. Their home life wasn't just a spectacle for the tabloids of the day, it was a model for the burgeoning middle class. Victoria and Albert's 9 children became the poster kids for Propriety and Duty Picture, a 19th-century version of a reality TV family, just with more crinoline and fewer Instagram followers. The couple was a masterclass in branding. They showed the world that a happy, stable family life was not only desirable, but achievable, even if it took a small army of nannies and tutors to manage it all. But let's not sugarcoat things. Their relationship was complex and fraught with challenges. Albert was constantly trying to prove himself in a world that was sceptical of a German prince's influence over the British Queen. And Victoria, despite her love for him, had to juggle the demands of her role as monarch with the expectations of a domestic goddess. It's like trying to run a multinational corporation while being a Pinterest-perfect parent. No pressure, right? Their influence extended beyond their home and into the very fabric of Victorian society. They championed the ideal of the domestic sphere, where the home was a sanctuary from the chaos of the outside world, a place where morality and manners reigned supreme. This was a radical shift from previous generations, where aristocratic marriages were often business transactions devoid of emotion. Victoria and Albert's love story, warts and all, brought a new level of intimacy and warmth to the public's perception of royal life. But let's not forget the economics of it all. Their lavish lifestyle was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it stimulated industries like textile manufacturing and architecture. On the other, it cost a pretty penny. The royal couple's penchant for luxury was both a boon and a burden, driving economic growth while also fueling debates about the role of the monarchy in an increasingly modern world. In the end, Victoria and Albert's marriage was a microcosm of the era's contradictions, a blend of public spectacle and private devotion, a beacon of domestic bliss that was as carefully curated as a modern-day Instagram feed. They were both symbols of their time and trailblazers for a new kind of monarchy, one that was more accessible, relatable, and, dare I say, human. Their legacy is a testament to the power of partnership, even when that partnership involved the occasional spat over interior design. So next time you think about the Victorian era and its stiff upper lip, remember the warmth, chaos, and humanity behind the throne. Victoria and Albert weren't just monarchs. They were a real couple with real challenges, making their mark on history one tartan at a time. And so, speaking of Victoria and Albert's domestic bliss as a beacon of Victorian sensibility, let's zoom out and take a gander at the bigger picture, namely, the jaw-dropping expansion of the British Empire during Queen Victoria's reign. It's like they took the phrase, go big or go home, a little too literally. By the end of her reign in 1901, the British Empire had ballooned to cover nearly a quarter of the Earth's landmass and about 400 million people. That's right, 1/5 of the world's population was under Victoria's stern yet grandmotherly gaze. This era of expansion was fueled by the Industrial Revolution, which was like the Energizer bunny on caffeine, propelling Britain into the forefront of global dominance. Now, if you'd been living in Britain at the time, you might have felt like you were on a non-stop victory lap. Railways were crisscrossing the country like never before. Factories were spewing out goods faster than you could say mass production, and the middle class was rising like a souffle that refused to deflate. The steam engine, which had once been a marvel, became as common as a cup of tea. By 1870, Britain had more than 15,000 miles of railway tracks, enough to travel from London to Timbuktu and back, with some change left for a scenic detour through the Cotswolds. But let's not get carried away by the romanticism of progress. The Industrial Revolution wasn't all rosy for everyone. While it birthed a prosperous middle class who could finally afford to furnish their homes with the latest in tartan decor, thanks Albert, it also spawned an underbelly of social inequality. The working class, often trapped in Dickensian conditions, sweated it out in factories that were more like infernos than workplaces. It's the kind of progress that came with a hefty price tag, like buying a fancy car only to realize you can't afford the insurance. Meanwhile, Queen Victoria was turned into a symbol of British morality and stability, a kind of living emblem of the virtues of the age. Her image was everywhere, from coins to commemorative plates, and she became a moral compass of sorts, guiding the nation through an era of dizzying change. The Victorians were obsessed with propriety and decorum, and Victoria herself was the poster child for these values. It's a bit ironic, really, considering her own life was filled with the kind of drama that would make a soap opera look like a documentary. Now, let's talk about Victoria's status as the so-called Grandmother of Europe, a title that sounds cozy but is actually a tangled web of political alliances and family feuds. You see, Victoria was a pro at matchmaking. Her kids and grandkids were married off to European royalty like pieces on a diplomatic chessboard. By the turn of the century, she was related to virtually every royal family in Europe. It sounds impressive until you realize that family gatherings must have been a diplomatic nightmare. Imagine Thanksgiving dinner, but with more tiaras and unresolved territorial disputes. One of the most persistent myths about Victoria is that she had this iron grip on her sprawling family, dictating their every move with the kind of authority that would make a drill sergeant blush. The reality? A bit less glamorous. Sure, she tried to maintain influence, but her efforts often bordered on absurd. Take her grandson Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, for example. Despite her attempts to instill him with British values, he grew up to be, well, let's say, a bit of a handful. Wilhelm's imperial ambitions would eventually contribute to the geopolitical tensions that led to World War I. So much for family harmony. It's worth noting that this era of empire building wasn't just about hoarding territories like stamps in a collector's album. There was an economic strategy behind it all. The colonies were both markets for British goods and sources of raw materials, creating a cycle that kept the British economy humming along nicely. The Victorians were masters of the global supply chain long before it became a buzzword in corporate boardrooms. But with great power comes great responsibility, or, in this case, great exploitation. Colonialism was a double-edged sword, bringing wealth to Britain while often leaving the colonies impoverished and oppressed. The sun may have never set on the British Empire, but it certainly cast some long shadows. Victoria's reign, then, was a time of unprecedented transformation, a whirlwind of industrial progress, social upheaval, and imperial expansion. Her image as a bastion of morality and stability was both a comforting illusion and a stark reminder of the era's contradictions. She was a grandmotherly figure presiding over a family of nations, holding them together with the kind of stern affection that only a queen could muster. And yet, beneath the surface, the seeds of future conflicts were quietly taking root, a testament to the complexity of an age that was anything but simple. So, as we continue to unravel the cultural tapestry of the Victorian era, let's not forget the realities lurking behind the myths. Queen Victoria may have been the symbol of an age, but her reign was fraught with challenges as complex as any faced by her predecessors or successors. The story of her time is not just a tale of progress and prosperity, but also one of tension and transition as the world grappled with the profound changes set in motion under her watchful eye. As we move forward, we'll delve deeper into how these dynamics shaped the world we know today, with all its triumphs, tragedies, and tantalizing tales. As the world continued to spin under Queen Victoria's watchful eye, it would soon be rocked by one of the most personal and profound tragedies of her life. Into stage left, 1861, the year that marked the end of Victoria's happiest times and the beginning of her mournful era. On December of that year, Prince Albert, Victoria's beloved husband and confidant, succumbed to typhoid fever at the tender age of 42. His death plunged Victoria into such deep mourning that it felt as if the sun had set on the British Empire itself. For the Queen, it wasn't just losing a spouse, it was losing her partner in crime, the yin to her yang, the Albert to her Victoria. Now, if you're imagining a few months of mourning followed by a gentle return to public life, think again. Victoria took her grief to a whole new level. She became the OG of mourning, donning black for the rest of her life, a whopping 40 years. In today's world, that would be like sticking to one monochrome wardrobe theme for 4 decades. Talk about a fashion commitment. But it wasn't just about the clothes. Victoria retreated from public life, earning herself the nickname the Widow of Windsor, a moniker that stuck like superglue. She even had Albert's rooms maintained as if he might pop back in for tea at any moment, with fresh linens and hot water prepared daily. Grief had turned her home into a shrine. But let's talk about something that even the most inventive Victorians couldn't have predicted: the commercialization of mourning. Victoria's public display of grief gave birth to an entire industry dedicated to mourning practices. Black crepe fabric became as essential as Wi-Fi is to us today, and mourning jewellery, yes, jewellery, became all the rage. Imagine wearing a bracelet made from your loved one's hair. Creepy? Maybe. But in Victorian times, it was all the rage, like collecting Pokemon cards, but with more emotional baggage. These macabre accessories became a must-have, turning sorrow into a fashion statement. In 1867, the British economy was being propped up by the production of mourning goods, proving that even grief could be monetized. Victoria's prolonged absence from public life was not without its consequences. Her self-imposed exile left a leadership vacuum, leading to growing Republican sentiment. The British public started to grumble, questioning why they had a monarch who refused to play the role. It's like hiring a DJ for your party who spends the entire night sulking in the corner. Not exactly what you signed up for, right? However, something, or rather someone, would soon shake things up. Enter John Brown, a Scottish gillie who became a surprising and controversial figure in Victoria's life. Brown was as rugged as the Scottish Highlands he hailed from, with a no-nonsense attitude that clashed deliciously with the stiffness of court protocol. He became Victoria's personal servant and confidant, offering her the companionship she desperately needed. Their friendship scandalized Victorian society. Gossip flew faster than a modern-day tweet storm, with whispers of a romantic relationship between the Queen and her servant. The press even dubbed her Mrs. Brown, a title that would make any PR agent cringe. But let's cut through the scandalous haze. While there's no solid evidence to support the claims of a romantic liaison, their friendship was undeniably close. Brown had a way of bringing Victoria back to life, coaxing her out of her shell and back into the public sphere. By the late 1860s, she began to re-emerge, albeit cautiously, into public duties. It was a slow process, like easing into a cold swimming pool, but it was a start. The economic and political landscape had shifted during her absence, and the Queen needed to adapt. Industrialization had surged forward, and the empire had grown even larger. Public transport, once a luxury, was becoming a necessity, and the middle class was ballooning faster than you could say industrial boom. The British economy was riding high, but beneath the surface, social tension simmered, and the calls for reform grew louder. Victoria's re-entry into public life was marked by a renewed sense of purpose. She threw herself into her duties with vigor, perhaps realizing that her absence had cost her more than she had bargained for. She began to engage more actively in politics, albeit from a constitutional distance, meeting with prime ministers and attending state functions. Her presence, once again, became a stabilizing force, a reminder of continuity in a rapidly changing world. As she embraced her role anew, Victoria inadvertently became a symbol of resilience. Her personal journey from grief to renewed public engagement mirrored the broader societal shifts of the time. The Victorian era, with all its contradictions and complexities, was a period of profound transformation, and Victoria herself was at its heart. Her mourning had given birth to new traditions, her friendship with Brown had challenged societal norms, and her eventual return to public life had reaffirmed the monarchy's relevance. So, as we draw this chapter to a close, remember that Victoria's later years were not just about surviving personal loss, they were about redefining her reign and, in doing so, reshaping the cultural landscape of Britain. Her story was one of adaptation and resilience, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, even when clad in black crape. As we continue to unravel the complex tapestry of Victoria's life and times, we'll explore how her reign laid the groundwork for the challenges of the 20th century. From personal tragedy to public triumph, Victoria's journey was far from over. So, buckle up, because there's more to this story, and it only gets more intriguing from here. Queen Victoria's journey from grief to public reintegration was a testament not just to her resilience, but to the indomitable spirit of the age she defined. As her life drew to a close in 1901, she left behind a legacy that was as intricate and multifaceted as the lace doilies that adorned her era's parlours. Her passing marked the end of an epoch, a period where the world had been reshaped by steam and steel, by empire and economy, an era that would forever bear her name in bold Victorian typeface. Victoria's death was more than the end of a life. It was the curtain call for an era that had seen Britain ascend to dizzying heights of global dominance. Her funeral was a grand affair, a final act of Victorian theatre that was both a celebration and a solemn farewell. With 400 million subjects spread across continents, the impact of her reign was felt far and wide. She was both the stern matriarch and the beloved Empress of India, a title bestowed upon her in 1876 to cement British rule over the subcontinent. It was a role she relished, despite never setting foot in India, a contradiction as grand as the empire itself. The image of Victoria as the Empress of India was part of the mythologizing that occurred during and after her reign. This image, carefully crafted and perpetuated, was of a queen who was both nurturing and authoritative, embodying the ideals of empire, even as her own life was a tapestry of personal and public contradictions. The reality was more complex. Victoria's personal quirks often clashed humorously with her public persona. For instance, while she was revered for her decorum, she was also known for a temper that could rival a hurricane. Her infamous outbursts were the stuff of legend, a reminder that beneath the crown was a woman as fallible and fiery as any of her subjects. The cultural legacy of the Victorian era is a kaleidoscope of contradictions. It was a time of strict moral codes and explosive industrial innovation, of empire building and social reform. The era that bore Victoria's name was responsible for some of the most rigid social mores, yet it also fostered a spirit of exploration and curiosity that would shape the modern world. This duality is perhaps best exemplified by the era's lasting influence on modern pop culture. Steampunk, with its whimsical blend of Victorian aesthetics and futuristic technology, owes its existence to the era's love affair with invention and industry. The cogs and gears of this genre are a nod to the steam engines that powered Victoria's Britain, a world where progress and propriety walked hand in hand. Moreover, the Victorian era's fascination with the macabre and the mysterious has left an indelible mark on our cultural imagination. From period dramas to Gothic literature, the aesthetics of the time continue to captivate and inspire. Think of the countless adaptations of Dickens, the resurgence of interest in Sherlock Holmes, or the enduring popularity of vampire tales, all of which owe a debt to the Victorian penchant for blending the mundane with the mysterious. It's as if the era's obsession with moral virtue and scientific progress was always shadowed by a darker, more mysterious undercurrent. Yet, as much as we romanticize the period, it's crucial to acknowledge the harsh realities that lay beneath its polished veneer. The industrial boom brought prosperity, but also profound social inequality. Child labour was rampant, and the working class often toiled in conditions that were anything but Dickensian in their grimness. The very progress that underpinned the era's achievements came at a human cost that is often glossed over in our nostalgia for the time. It's a sobering reminder that the gears of progress are often greased with the sweat and toil of the many, even as they propel the few to new heights. Victoria's legacy, then, is one of both grandeur and grit. Her reign was a period of transformation that laid the groundwork for the modern world, yet it was also a time of great contradictions. The Queen herself was a living embodiment of these tensions, a ruler who was both revered and reviled, a woman who could wield immense power yet was bound by the strictures of her time. Her life, much like the era she defined, was a tapestry woven with threads of triumph and tragedy, of personal quirks and public duty. As we close the book on Queen Victoria's story, it's clear that her influence extends far beyond the confines of her empire. Her legacy is etched into the very fabric of our cultural consciousness, a testament to the power of a single life to shape the course of history. Whether as a symbol of empire, a paragon of virtue, or a figure of fascination, Victoria's story continues to resonate, reminding us of the complexities and contradictions that define the human experience. So, the next time you encounter a piece of Victorian history or a steampunk fantasy, remember the Queen who started it all, the woman whose reign was a grand tapestry of innovation and tradition, of progress and paradox. As the sun set on the British Empire, it cast a long shadow that still influences us today, a legacy as enduring and enigmatic as Victoria herself. In ancient Rome, the phrase, "go big or go home," could have been coined by the guys who decided that a simple racetrack just wouldn't cut it. Enter the Circus Maximus, a behemoth of a stadium stretching 601 metres long and 118 metres wide, capable of seating around 150,000 roaring Romans. That's the kind of crowd that could fill multiple modern sports arenas. Forget your Super Bowl halftime shows. This was the place where chariots raced at breakneck speeds, political alliances were forged, and emperors flaunted their power like peacocks on parade. Now, let's dispel a common misconception. These colossal structures weren't just vanity projects for emperors with too much time and money on their hands. No, the Circus Maximus was a crucial hub of Roman social and political life. It was the Facebook of its day, minus the cat memes and heated comment sections. This was where the populace could gather, exchange news, and, most importantly, be reminded of who was in charge. In a city teeming with over 1 million people, the circus was a unifying force, a place where the rich and poor alike could come together, albeit in very different seats. Speaking of seats, the economics behind these grand projects were as complex as a Roman mosaic. Building something like the Circus Maximus wasn't just about stacking stones and hoping for the best. It required serious financial backing and logistical prowess. The construction was fueled by a mix of public and private funds, with emperors like Julius Caesar and Augustus throwing sesterces around like confetti to ensure their names were etched into the annals of history. These weren't your average Kickstarter campaigns. They were massive investments in public approval and political stability. And let's not forget the labor force. The sheer manpower required was staggering. Slaves, soldiers, and skilled artisans all toiled under the sweltering sun to create these architectural wonders. But don't get too misty-eyed about the romantic notion of ancient craftsmanship. The reality was often brutal, with workers facing harsh conditions and little reward beyond the occasional pat on the back, if they were lucky. Of course, the Circus Maximus wasn't just about chariots and cheering crowds. It was also a stage for imperial propaganda. Emperors would sponsor games and distribute gifts to curry favor with the masses. Imagine throwing a party for 150,000 of your closest friends, and you'll get a sense of the scale and cost of these events. It was all about optics, and in a city as politically charged as Rome, the right image could make or break an emperor. The games themselves were more than just entertainment. They were a tool of social control. Keep the populace entertained, and they might just forget about the grain shortages or the latest tax hikes. The Latin phrase panem et circenses, bread and circuses, wasn't just a catchy slogan. It was a keen observation of how emperors maintained power. Distract the people with lavish spectacles, and you could rule with relative ease. Yet there's a certain allure to the myth of Rome as a civilization built on grandeur and spectacle. Who wouldn't want to believe in a city where anything seemed possible, where engineering genius and showmanship combined in a dazzling display of human achievement? But beneath the marble and gilded statues lay the gritty reality of a society built on inequality and exploitation. So, the next time you marvel at the ruins of the Circus Maximus, remember that this wasn't just a playground for the ancient elite. It was a microcosm of Roman life, a testament to human ambition, and a reminder that even in ancient times, nothing quite captured the public's imagination like a good old-fashioned race. The Circus Maximus was just the beginning. If you think the Romans were content with colossal racetracks, buckle up, because their architectural ambitions reached sky-high with concrete, a material that, quite literally, cemented their legacy. Enter the Pantheon, the crown jewel of Roman engineering, boasting a dome so impressive that even today's architects would give a polite nod of approval. Now, let's set the scene. The Pantheon's dome stretches a whopping 43.3 meters in diameter. That's large enough to park a Boeing 747 inside, wingspan and all. This wasn't just a feat of engineering, it was a downright miracle of ancient construction. The Romans used a revolutionary building material that would change the game forever: concrete. Not the stuff you see on your neighborhood sidewalk, but a unique concoction that made Roman buildings stand the test of time. So, what made Roman concrete so special? The secret sauce was volcanic ash, specifically pozzolana, which they sourced from the Bay of Naples. This ash, when mixed with lime and water, created a sturdy, durable substance that could be molded into any shape. It was like discovering the cheat code for architecture. The Romans weren't just stacking stones like some ancient game of Jenga. They were crafting structures that could withstand earthquakes and centuries of wear and tear. Talk about a long-term investment. But hang on a second. Let's not romanticize this as an overnight success story. The road to concrete mastery was paved with trial and error. Romans weren't born architectural geniuses. They made plenty of flubs along the way. Imagine the ancient equivalent of oops moments when a wall crumbled mid-construction or a design didn't quite work out as planned. It's easy to picture the foreman scratching his head, wondering why that arch didn't quite hold up. And then there was the challenge of logistics. Sourcing volcanic ash was no small feat. It required a well-oiled supply chain that would make Amazon blush. They had to transport this material over considerable distances, a task that involved a flotilla of ships, well-trained labourers, and an entire economy geared towards construction. It was like running a marathon while juggling flaming torches, complex and risky, with no room for error. Now, debunking time. There's a myth floating around that the Romans were perfectionists who got everything right on the first try. Reality check, they were more like ancient hackers, constantly tweaking and adjusting their methods. They experimented with different mixtures and techniques, learning from each failure until they hit the jackpot with the Pantheon. It's a tale as old as time. Innovation thrives on failure, not divine inspiration. But why go to such lengths? Why was it so crucial for Rome to build extravagantly and, more importantly, durably? The answer lies in their love for legacy and power. These structures weren't just buildings. They were monuments to Roman might and ingenuity. In a world where emperors came and went faster than modern politicians' approval ratings, leaving behind an indestructible structure was a statement that said, "I was here, and I meant business." Let's get real. Constructing the Pantheon wasn't just about showcasing technical prowess, it was also a savvy political move. Emperor Hadrian, the man behind the masterpiece, knew how to wield architecture as a tool of power. By building something that defied the laws of gravity and common sense, he was making a statement, a bold, unmissable statement, that Rome was the center of the universe and its rulers were nothing short of divine. But before we get too caught up in the grandeur, remember that this marvel of engineering was also a gathering place for the masses. Its vast interior was designed to awe and inspire, but it also provided a venue for public events and ceremonies. It was a space where the divine and the mundane coexisted, where citizens could feel part of something greater. And yet, behind the shiny facade of innovation, there was a gritty reality. The labor force that built these wonders was primarily composed of slaves and lower-class citizens. While the emperors and architects basked in glory, these individuals toiled under harsh conditions. The Pantheon, like many Roman structures, was as much a testament to human ambition as it was to human exploitation. So, the next time you gaze up at the Pantheon's dome, remember the unsung heroes who mixed the concrete, lifted the stones, and shaped the history we now admire. The Romans might have had the vision, but it was the sweat and labor of countless workers that turned those dreams into reality. In the end, Roman concrete wasn't just a building material, it was the foundation of an empire, a symbol of human ingenuity, and a reminder that even the most enduring legacies are built on the backs of many. And as we delve deeper into the marvels of Roman architecture, prepare to uncover more stories of innovation intertwined with the harsh realities of an empire that knew how to impress, but also knew the cost of that impression. And speaking of enduring legacies, let's dive into the ancient world of Roman aqueducts, the original water slides of history, minus the fun. Now, if you're picturing these aqueducts as quaint little bridges trickling water into Roman bathhouses, you've got another thing coming. These were monumental feats of engineering designed to haul massive amounts of water across vast distances with the kind of precision that would make even a modern-day civil engineer nod in respect. Let's break it down. At its zenith, the Roman Empire boasted over 11 aqueducts that stretched more than 500 kilometers. That's roughly the distance from Los Angeles to San Francisco, all dedicated to quenching the thirst of a city that never stopped growing. Talk about the ultimate thirst trap. And these weren't flimsy structures, they were built to last. The Aqua Appia, Rome's first aqueduct, was constructed in 31-2 BCE, and some parts of it are still standing today. That's over 2,300 years of service, folks. Try getting that kind of mileage out of your modern plumbing. But here's where it gets juicy, the logistics of water distribution. The Romans didn't just build these aqueducts for fun or to show off their engineering prowess. No, this was about control of resources and of people. Water was power, literally and metaphorically. Keeping the taps flowing required a delicate dance of political maneuvering, economic foresight and, let's be honest, a bit of good old-fashioned Roman cunning. With aqueducts, the Romans weren't just moving water, they were moving mountains in terms of political influence. Imagine trying to convince landowners to let you plough through their property with a massive stone structure. It's not like you could just sweet-talk them with a bottle of vintage wine and a charming smile. Instead, it often involved complex negotiations, financial incentives, or, when all else failed, a reminder of who had the bigger army. It was water diplomacy at its finest. And speaking of costs, these projects were not cheap. The Aqua Claudia, one of the most famous of the Roman aqueducts, took 14 years to complete and cost a fortune. An estimated 180 million sesterces, which is roughly equivalent to a few $billions today. That's a lot of dough for water delivery, but in a city of over 1 million people, it was a necessary investment. The Romans understood that if you wanted people to stick around, you needed to keep them hydrated, and not just with wine. Now, let's debunk some myths. It's easy to romanticize these aqueducts as purely benevolent public works. In reality, they were a tool of social stratification. Water wasn't equally distributed. The wealthy neighborhoods got the lion's share, while the poorer districts often had to make do with less. It was a classic case of the haves and have-nots, with water as the ultimate status symbol. And if you think today's water politics are cutthroat, just imagine the backroom deals that went down in ancient Rome. But beyond the politics and economics, the societal impact of these aqueducts was profound. They transformed Rome from a collection of huts on the Tiber into a bustling metropolis. With reliable access to water, the city could sustain public baths, fountains, and even the occasional spectacular water display in the Colosseum. Yes, the Romans were known to flood the arena for mock naval battles, because why not? If you've got an aqueduct and you know how to use it, you might as well entertain the masses. And here's the kicker. The aqueducts were more than just infrastructure. They were a testament to Roman ambition and ingenuity. They showed the world that Rome wasn't just another city. It was the city. It's a bit like the ancient version of having the tallest skyscraper or the fastest internet. It wasn't just about utility, it was about making a statement. Yet, let's not forget the people who maintained this watery wonderland. Keeping these aqueducts in working order was a Herculean task. Engineers and labourers had to constantly clear out debris, repair leaks, and ensure the water flowed smoothly. It was a never-ending job, and while the emperors received the accolades, these workers slobbed away in relative obscurity. They were the unsung heroes, ensuring that Rome's thirst for water and power was never left unquenched. So, next time you sip a glass of water, take a moment to appreciate the complex dance of politics, power, and engineering that made it possible. In the grand tapestry of history, Roman aqueducts are not just relics of the past. They're reminders of what humanity can achieve when it dares to dream big and build even bigger. And as we continue to explore the marvels of Roman architecture, keep in mind the intricate interplay of ambition and reality that shaped the empire's legacy, one aqueduct at a time. And speaking of crafting the empire's legacy, one stone at a time, let's hit the open road, Roman style. If aqueducts were the veins of Rome, pumping life-giving water into the city's heart, then the Roman roads were its arteries, spreading influence far and wide. But before you start daydreaming about scenic drives through the Italian countryside, remember, Roman roads were more about military might and money than meandering road trips. Now, here's a concrete fact for you. The Romans constructed over 400,000 kilometers of roads. Yep, that's enough to wrap around the earth 10 times. This wasn't just a matter of paving paths for weary sandals. The roads were meticulously designed, often straight as an arrow, to ensure swift movement of troops and goods. We're talking about highways that were the envy of the ancient world, making modern infrastructure look like a child's Lego set. But let's not romanticize this as some altruistic endeavor. The roads were first and foremost a military tool. Picture a Roman legion, all 5,000 strong, marching down a perfectly straight road towards another conquest. The roads allowed Rome to flex its military muscles, deploying legions at a speed that would make Amazon Prime delivery jealous. It was less about wanderlust and more about wanderlust for world domination. The construction of these roads wasn't for the faint-hearted or the light-pocketed. Building a Roman road was a Herculean task that required serious cash and manpower. Take the famed Via Appia, for example. It stretched from Rome to the port city of Brindisi, a whopping 563 kilometers. This ancient superhighway was no dirt track. It was a feat of engineering with layers of sand, gravel, and tightly fitted paving stones. The cost? Astronomical. The labour? Backbreaking. The result? Priceless, if you were a Roman emperor with an empire to run. Speaking of labour, let's talk about the folks who actually built these stone marvels. Spoiler alert, it wasn't the emperors laying down the bricks. Slaves, soldiers, and local labourers all played a role in carving these roads out of the landscape. The conditions were brutal, with workers toiling under the relentless sun, often with little to show for their efforts beyond a completed stretch of road. The reality of this labour was about as glamorous as a muddy boot. And while we're on the subject of myths, let's debunk the idea that these roads were all about state-sponsored unity and progress. Sure, they facilitated trade and cultural exchange, but they also helped maintain an iron grip on conquered territories. Roads meant Rome could swiftly respond to uprisings, collect taxes, and remind everyone who was in charge. It was less about bringing people together and more about keeping them in line. Yet, despite their militaristic beginnings, the roads became conduits of cultural exchange. Merchants, artisans, and scholars travelled these routes, carrying goods and ideas from one end of the empire to the other. Spices from the east, wool from Britain, and olives from Spain crisscrossed the empire, creating a vibrant tapestry of trade. It was a cultural melting pot on a grand scale, facilitated by stones and sweat. Economically, these roads were a boon. They slashed travel time and reduced transport costs, which was a big deal in a world where speed was measured in hoofbeats and sailboats. The roads made it possible for Rome to sustain its sprawling empire, feeding the capital with grain from Egypt and luxury goods from the provinces. It was the ancient equivalent of a global supply chain, minus the shipping delays. And let's not forget the phrase that's become synonymous with the Roman infrastructure dream, all roads lead to Rome. It wasn't just a catchy slogan, it was a literal truth. Rome was the epicenter, the hub of a vast network that linked the far-flung corners of the empire. From Londinium, that's London, to you and me, to Alexandria, all paths converged on the eternal city. It was a metaphor for Rome's centrality and dominance, a reminder that no matter where you were in the empire, the shadow of Rome loomed large. Yet, for all their grandeur, these roads also highlight the darker side of Roman ambition. The roads were a testament to the might of an empire that thrived on conquest and control. They were pathways of power, reflecting a society that valued expansion and dominance above all else. They remind us that every mile of road was built on the backs of those who had little choice in the matter. So, as you imagine the hustle and bustle of ancient trade caravans and marching legions, remember the complex tapestry of ambition, economics, and sheer human effort that made it all possible. The Roman roads were more than just slabs of stone. They were the lifelines of an empire, a testament to both human ingenuity and the relentless march of imperial ambition. And as we continue this journey through Rome's architectural legacy, keep in mind that each stone and archway tells a story of a civilization that dared to dream big, build even bigger, and leave a footprint that still fascinates us today. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where we'll delve deeper into the marvels of Roman innovation and the realities that lay beneath their gleaming surface. Rome wasn't just about the glitz and glamour of grand spectacles or the architectural feats that would make even the most seasoned engineer raise an eyebrow. No, it was also about the lasting impact of those stone wonders. The legacy of Roman architecture is like that catchy tune you can't get out of your head, pervasive, influential, and a bit mysterious in its staying power. From the domes that defy gravity to the roads that connected continents, Rome's building blocks weren't just for show, they were the blueprints for the modern world. Let's start with the concrete jungle. No, not New York City. I'm talking about the real OGs, the Romans, who quite literally wrote the book on concrete. Roman concrete, or opus caementicium if you're feeling fancy, was a concoction so revolutionary that it held structures together for millennia. When you walk past a crumbling ruin today, you're not just seeing the remnants of history, you're witnessing the durability of a formula that modern engineers still study with a tinge of envy. Take the Pantheon, for instance. Its dome, with its open oculus, remains the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. That's right. No steel reinforcements, just ancient ingenuity. Talk about a mic drop moment in architectural history. But let's not get too starry-eyed. Behind this marvel lay a dark truth, forced labour. Those magnificent arches and imposing colonnades were built on the backs of slaves and lower-class labourers. Sure, Roman architects were geniuses, but their designs came to life through sheer brute force and relentless toil. It's a bit like admiring a beautiful painting while knowing the artist was chained to their easel. The grandeur we admire today was forged in the fires of exploitation, a sobering reminder that every piece of history has its shadow. Moving on to the aqueducts, the ancient water slides with a not-so-fun twist. These were the veins of the Roman Empire, pumping life-giving water into the cities and ensuring that public baths, fountains, and even a few naval battles in the Colosseum were possible. The Aqua Appia and its ilk were more than just practical. They were statements of power. They made it clear that Rome was a city of abundance, where water flowed freely, unless, of course, you were in the wrong part of town. Yes, it's the classic tale of the haves and have-nots. Wealthier districts enjoyed cool, refreshing streams, while poorer areas were left with a trickle. Not exactly the picture of equality, but it was an empire, not a democracy. Yet, the aqueducts also spark a sense of wonder. They managed to deliver water over hills, across valleys, and through the heart of a bustling metropolis, with a precision that modern engineers still admire. If you've ever cursed your local plumbing for a leaky faucet, take a moment to appreciate the Romans, who managed to keep the water flowing without the benefit of modern technology. It's a testament to their skill and determination, even if the labourers who kept it all running rarely got their due credit. And let's not forget the roads, those stone arteries that stretched across continents, connecting the empire like a well-oiled machine. The Roman roads were more than just paths. They were lifelines for trade, military campaigns, and cultural exchange. They were built to last, with layers of gravel, sand, and stone that have withstood the test of time. But they were also tools of control, ensuring that Rome could mobilize its legions at a moment's notice. It was less about sightseeing and more about strategic dominance. The phrase, "all roads lead to Rome," wasn't just a boast, it was a reality of imperial logistics. Yet, these roads also facilitated cultural diffusion. Ideas, goods, and even people flowed along them, turning the empire into a melting pot of languages, traditions, and innovations. From Britannia to Egypt, the roads carried more than just soldiers and taxes, they carried the essence of Rome itself. It's a reminder that even infrastructure has the power to shape societies for better or worse. Now, how do these ancient marvels stack up against modern infrastructure? Well, we've borrowed a few tricks from the Romans. Our skyscrapers owe a debt to their concrete magic, and our highways echo the straight, efficient lines of Roman roads. Modern plumbing systems, despite their occasional hiccups, still draw inspiration from the aqueduct's principles. We may have fancier gadgets and more advanced materials, but the core ideas remain strikingly similar. It's almost like we're all playing variations on a Roman theme with a 21st century twist. But let's not gloss over the darker legacy. The exploitation of labour, the social stratification, the imperialistic ambitions. These are threads that run through history, not just Roman history. As we admire the ruins and reconstruct their stories, we must also reckon with these uncomfortable truths. It's easy to get swept up in the romance of ancient Rome, but it's crucial to remember the reality that lay beneath the marble facades. In the grand tapestry of time, Roman architecture stands out not just for its beauty and innovation, but for its complexity. It's a story of human ambition and ingenuity, of dreams realized and costs incurred. The Romans dared to build big, to push the limits of what was possible, and in doing so, they left a legacy that continues to resonate. As we navigate our own modern world, we might do well to remember the lessons of Rome, both the triumphs and the shadows they cast. So next time you're stuck in traffic on a freeway or marveling at a city skyline, spare a thought for the Romans. They were the original architects of ambition, the dreamers and doers who laid the foundations for a world that continues to stand on their shoulders. And as you drift off to sleep, let their legacy inspire both awe and reflection. After all, history is more than just the past. It's the blueprint for our future. The morning sun peeks over the horizon, casting its golden glow on your thatched hut. Today, you awaken as a Vedic priest in 1500 BC India. This isn't just any morning, it's the start of a day steeped in ritual and tradition. You're part of an ancient society where your role isn't just defined by what you do, but by what you know. And what you know is the Rig Veda, the most revered scripture of your time, a collection of hymns and poems that shape your world and your place within it. Now, let's not get too carried away romanticizing the life of a Vedic priest. Sure, you might be thinking of serene chants under sprawling banyan trees, but the reality is a bit more, well, grounded. You're a Brahmin, the top tier in the Varna system, but don't let that fool you into thinking it's all power and privilege. The caste system, or Varna as it's known here, is like a social Rubik's Cube, with each piece trying to fit into society's grand design. You might be on top, but that just means you've got a lot to live up to. You know, the Rig Veda isn't just a book. It's your guide, your lifeline to the divine. Composed in archaic Sanskrit, it's a collection of 1028 hymns that have been passed down orally over generations. These aren't just stories. They're the cosmic blueprints of your universe. They explain everything, from the creation of the world to the intricacies of natural phenomena. And as a priest, you've got the monumental task of not just reciting these verses, but living them. Talk about pressure. Your day begins with a ritual bath in the river, a luxury that's literally as refreshing as it sounds. In a world where soap is still a few millennia away, this is your best shot at cleanliness. After you've cleansed both body and spirit, you wrap yourself in simple, unstitched cloth. Fashion isn't exactly a priority here. Functionality is king. You grab your staff, not just a walking aid, but a symbol of your office, and head to the village. Here's the thing about your community. It's not the bustling metropolis of modern-day Mumbai. It's more of a cozy hamlet where everyone knows everyone, and news travels faster than you'd think. The economy doesn't run on coins. It's a barter system that keeps the wheels turning. You want a new clay pot? Better hope you've got something the potter needs, like grain or maybe a goat. Speaking of goats, let's talk numbers. A goat could set you back anywhere from 5 to 10 bushels of barley, depending on its age and health. But if you were thinking of trading for a cow, you'd better be prepared to part with a small herd of goats, or an equivalent in grain. It's a complex dance of negotiation that makes modern-day stock markets look like child's play. Your role as a priest means you're at the heart of the village's economic life too. You perform rituals for everything from successful harvests to auspicious marriages. And these services, they're not free. In return, you might receive offerings like food, cloth, or livestock. Think of it as the original freelance gig economy, but without the internet trolls. As the sun climbs higher, you gather with other villagers for the daily Agnihotra, a fire ritual that's supposed to keep the cosmic order in check. It's a bit like clocking in for a shift, but with more chanting and less paperwork. The smoke from the sacred fire curls upwards, carrying your hymns to the heavens, or so you hope. You're not just keeping the gods happy, you're maintaining the balance of the universe. No pressure, right? The Vedic society is all about maintaining harmony, be it with the cosmos or within the social order. The Varna system is pretty rigid, and everyone has their role. You, as a Brahmin, are the spiritual guide, the teacher, the one who knows the Rig Veda inside out. Below you are the Kshatriyas, the warriors and rulers who think they run the show with their chariots and bows. Then there are the Vaishyas, the traders and farmers who keep the economy humming along. And finally, the Shudras, the labourers, who do the work no one else wants to touch with a 10-foot pole. But let's not pretend everything's perfect. This caste system isn't exactly a beacon of equality. Sure, the romanticised version paints it as a harmonious division of labour, but the reality is more stratified than a social media influencer's feed. You get respect, but you also get responsibility, and stepping out of line is not an option. As the day wears on, you find yourself back at the village, where the marketplace buzzes with the hum of trade. Here, the barter system is in full swing. Good luck finding anyone with coins jangling in their pockets. Currency is a concept for the future. Instead, it's all about what you have to trade. Grain for cloth, pottery for livestock. It's a constant shuffle of goods that keeps everyone on their toes. And while we're on the topic of economics, let's bust a myth. The idea that everyone lived in idyllic simplicity. Sure, life wasn't as complex as today's digital chaos, but survival was a full-time job. There were no supermarkets, no Amazon Prime. Every day was a hustle, and you had to make sure you had enough to get by, whether you were bartering for food or performing a ritual. As the sun dips toward the horizon, you make your way home. The village is settling down, with the smoke from cooking fires rising into the dusky sky. You've spent the day keeping cosmic order, ensuring the gods are appeased, and maintaining the social fabric of your community. It's no small feat, but it's all part of the job when you're a Vedic priest. So, as you sit by the fire, reciting the Rig Veda's verses under the starlit sky, you can't help but reflect on your place in this ancient tapestry. You're a custodian of knowledge, a keeper of tradition, and a pivotal piece in the grand puzzle of Vedic society. And tomorrow? Well, it's another day to do it all over again. As the night deepens and the embers of your fire cast a flickering glow, you begin to ponder the next day's ritual. This isn't some casual affair where a quick chant and a sprinkle of holy water will do. Nope, you're diving into the deep end, one of those epic Vedic rituals that require precision, patience, and let's be honest, a touch of theatrical flair. Imagine a performance where your audience is not just the villagers, but the very gods themselves. No pressure, right? Rituals in Vedic society aren't just about spiritual enlightenment, they're the glue that holds the social fabric together. They dictate the rhythms of life, the success of crops, the health of cattle, and even the happiness of marriages. In short, they are the ultimate cosmic customer service. And who better to manage this delicate balance than you, the Vedic priest? With your trusty Rigveda in tow, you've got a whopping 1,028 hymns at your disposal, each one a verbal tightrope walk that demands perfect execution. Let's talk about the Herculean task of memorization. In an age where the written word is as rare as a unicorn, you rely entirely on oral tradition. Thousands of verses, each with its own cadence and nuance, must be etched into your memory as clearly as a viral TikTok dance. The stakes are high. Mispronounce a word, and you risk the whole cosmic order collapsing like a poorly constructed Jenga tower. Forget the romantic image of a meditative sage. You're more of a linguistic acrobat, flipping through syllables with the dexterity of a Cirque du Soleil performer. The training for this role is intense. It starts young. Think of it as the Vedic version of boot camp. By the time you're a teenager, you should have a Rolodex of hymns in your head, ready to be unleashed at the drop of the ceremonial hat. Missing a line or getting distracted halfway through isn't an option. It's not just about keeping the gods entertained, it's about ensuring the community's prosperity and peace. Failure could mean a bad harvest, and let's just say, no one wants to be the reason the village's grain stock runs dry. While you're the maestro of these cosmic concerts, don't think for a second that you're just some spiritual figurehead. Oh no, your influence seeps into politics like ink on papyrus. In a society where the line between divine and mundane is blurrier than your vision after staring at the sun, priests wield considerable sway. You advise the rulers, the kshatriyas, on everything from warfare to weather patterns. Your knowledge of the Vedas isn't merely spiritual, it's strategic, and that makes you a key player in local governance. But let's debunk the myth that this influence is all incense and enlightenment. Sure, guiding a king sounds glamorous, but there's a Machiavellian edge to it. You need to balance the desires of the rulers with the needs of the people and the whims of the gods, a juggling act worthy of its own reality show. Your position at the top of the social hierarchy isn't just about prestige, it's about politics. You might be the spiritual compass of the community, but you're also the one steering the ship through treacherous waters. The village council meetings, where decisions about land, taxation and justice are made, often see you playing the role of mediator. Your voice carries weight, not just because of your spiritual authority, but because of your deep understanding of the Vedic texts. In a world where literacy is limited, your ability to recite and interpret these ancient words gives you a power akin to that of a modern-day lawyer brandishing a law degree. Yet, let's not paint you entirely as the puppet master pulling the strings from behind a curtain of smoke and mirrors. There's a genuine sense of duty here, a commitment to the well-being of your community. Sure, you navigate the complexities of politics and power, but you also genuinely care about the people's fortunes. Your rituals aim to ensure a balance between the earthly and the divine, and that's no small feat in a society where the two are so intertwined. As you prepare for tomorrow's ritual, you can't help but marvel at the intricate dance of roles you're expected to perform. Spiritual guide, political advisor, community leader, each title comes with its own set of challenges and responsibilities. It's a balancing act that requires equal parts wisdom and wit, devotion and diplomacy. And while the romanticized image of the Vedic priest might be one of serene contemplation, the reality is a lot more dynamic. With the stars as your silent witnesses, you lay down in your thatched hut, contemplating the day that awaits. The morning will bring another round of rituals, another opportunity to keep the cosmic order in check. And with each verse you recite, each flame you kindle, you'll be weaving the threads of tradition that bind your community together. So, as sleep finally overtakes you, know that your role, while complex and demanding, is essential. Because in this world, where the spiritual and the temporal are forever intertwined, the Vedic priest is both a keeper of the past and a beacon for the future. As the first light of dawn nudges you into another day as a Vedic priest, you're already aware that today is a special kind of busy. You're not just maintaining cosmic order, you're diving into the Agnihotra, the daily fire ritual that's as crucial to Vedic life as Wi-Fi is to ours. It's not just a spiritual gig, it's an all-hands-on-deck kind of operation. You might think of it as a cosmic call center, but instead of handling customer service woes, you're ensuring the universe doesn't implode. No pressure, right? Let's break down the Agnihotra, shall we? Imagine a ritual that's part science experiment, part spiritual endeavor, and part performance art. The materials list reads like an ancient shopping receipt: cow dung cakes, ghee, clarified butter, specific types of wood like ashvatha and palasha, and a handful of rice. The cow dung might sound less than glamorous, but in a world devoid of propane, it's the go-to fuel, not to mention its sacred status. Talk about turning waste into a holy commodity. Now, if you're wondering about the cost of this ritual, here's a reality check. Ghee isn't just floating around like it grows on trees. It's the ancient equivalent of liquid gold, especially during times when your dairy supply might be as temperamental as a Hollywood diva. Producing ghee requires milk from a well-fed cow, which in turn demands good pasture land, no small feat in a barter economy. Each component of the ritual carries its own economic weight, a fact that makes you appreciate the beauty of simplicity and the burden of necessity all at once. Picture this. The sun is nearing its zenith, and you're in the ritual's groove. With the sacred fire crackling at your feet, you begin the chants. It's a symphony of syllables, an oral tradition that's been passed down like the world's most important game of telephone. Each word you utter is meticulously crafted to ensure the balance between the earthly and the divine. A misstep here isn't just a social faux pas, it's a cosmic blunder. Your reputation as a priest and the welfare of your community ride on every correctly pronounced mantra. But let's talk about the not-so-divine logistics. Keeping the sacred fire burning isn't just a matter of flicking a lighter. No, this requires labor, significant, sweaty, back-breaking labor. The wood needs to be gathered, dried, and chopped. The cow dung cakes have to be made and sun-dried, preferably before the monsoon turns them into a soggy mess. And let's not forget the cattle that have to be meticulously cared for to ensure a steady supply of milk for that precious ghee. It's an agricultural feat that makes the ritual look less like a serene spiritual exercise and more like a full-scale production. Then there's the environmental impact. In a world where the phrase carbon footprint hasn't been coined yet, the Agnihotra ritual does require a significant amount of natural resources. Wood, ghee, and rice are all consumed in the ritual fires, raising questions about sustainability even back then. It's a delicate balance between spiritual necessity and earthly resource management, a balance that would make even the most seasoned modern-day environmentalists sweat. You see, the Agnihotra isn't just about chanting and offering. It's an entire ecosystem, a mini-economy that affects and reflects the community's prosperity. Think of it as a spiritual stock market, where each offering made to the fire is an investment in the cosmic order. But unlike Wall Street, there's no bailout if the spiritual economy crashes. The stakes are high, and so is the pressure to keep everything in harmonious balance. And while we're on the topic of balance, let's debunk a myth or two. The romantic notion of the Vedic priest as a serene figure, unfazed by the world's chaos, is just that, a notion. In reality, you're juggling more responsibilities than a circus performer. The Agnihotra is just one of many rituals in your repertoire, but it's a daily reminder of your role as both a spiritual guide and a community cornerstone. As the flames dance and smoke curls into the midday sky, you reflect on the social stratification that underpins your world. The Varna system, with its rigid hierarchy, mirrors the complexities of the ritual itself. You might be at the top, but it's no cushy gig. The Kshatriyas, with their chariots and ambitions, rely on your spiritual acumen to justify their rule. The Vaishyas look to your rituals to ensure their crops and trades flourish. Meanwhile, the Shudras, often relegated to the sidelines, are the unsung heroes who keep the wheels turning by providing the labor that fuels these sacred fires. This isn't just religious ritual, it's social glue. It's what keeps everyone in their lane, maintaining the balance between obligation and devotion. The idealized vision might paint this as a harmonious symphony, but scratch the surface, and it's a cacophony of competing needs, desires, and expectations. It's messy, but it's the only system anyone knows. As the ritual concludes, you extinguish the sacred fire, a symbolic act that signifies the closing of the cosmic loop, or at least until the next one. You've kept the universe in harmony for another day, but as you wipe the soot from your hands, you're acutely aware of the labor and sacrifice involved in this daily dance. The Agnihotra might be a ritual of divine significance, but it's also a testament to the gritty realities of Vedic life. With the sun beginning its slow descent, you reflect on your place in this ancient world. You're not just a priest, you're a custodian of tradition, an arbiter of cosmic justice, and a key player in the social and economic life of your community. The Agnihotra, with all its complexities and demands, is just one part of the tapestry you weave daily. But it's a crucial one, a reminder of the delicate balance between myth and reality, idealism and pragmatism. So, as you gather your tools and head back to your hut, you're reminded that history is as much about the sweat and toil as it is about the hymns and holy fires. The rituals might appear timeless, but they're deeply rooted in the practicalities and politics of the world you inhabit. Tomorrow will bring another fire, another chance to maintain the cosmic order, and another opportunity to navigate the intricate dance that is life as a Vedic priest. And as you close your eyes, you know that while the rituals may be ancient, the questions they raise about balance and sacrifice are timeless. As you close your eyes, you're reminded that history is as much about the sweat and toil as it is about the hymns and holy fires. The rituals might appear timeless, but they're deeply rooted in the practicalities and politics of the world you inhabit. Tomorrow will bring another fire, another chance to maintain the cosmic order, and another opportunity to navigate the intricate dance that is life as a Vedic priest. But before you drift off, let's dig into the afternoon's shadowy realm of myths and legends. Ah, myths, those alluring tales that give your priestly duties a divine sheen. While you might be tempted to picture yourself as a mystical bridge between gods and men, the reality is a bit messier. Sure, the stories of divine intervention add a layer of mystique to your role, but let's not kid ourselves. These legends are as much about political maneuvering as they are about spiritual enlightenment. Take the oft-told tale of Indra, the Vedic deity of storms and warfare. According to legend, Indra once slayed the serpent Vritra, who had been hoarding all the earth's waters. Cue the dramatic drum roll as the people cheered and the rivers flowed free once more. Sounds like a blockbuster, right? But peel back the layers, and you see a story cleverly woven to justify the dominance of the Kshatriyas, the warrior class. The myth casts them as the earthly proxies of Indra, giving them both divine sanction and a handy excuse for their often aggressive expansions. Now, don't get me wrong, these myths are not just empty propaganda. They're cultural glue, reinforcing social norms and hierarchies. But they also serve as a reminder that the line between divine mandate and earthly ambition is blurrier than a foggy morning on the Ganges. As a priest, you're not just the teller of these tales, you're the interpreter, the one who assures the people that the cosmic scales are balanced. It's a delicate dance of faith and pragmatism with a touch of showmanship to keep things interesting. But what about the role of women in all this divine drama? The popular narrative is that women were sidelined, left to the domestic sphere, while the priests and warriors took center stage. However, the Vedic texts tell a more nuanced story. Women, or at least some women, had roles and rituals and could be seen as upholders of Dharma, or cosmic order. Take the example of Gargi Vachaknavi, a renowned philosopher who dared to challenge the great sage Yajnavalkya in a public debate. Her presence in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is a testament to the fact that women were not entirely shut out of intellectual and spiritual arenas. That said, let's not paint too rosy a picture. The reality was complex and varied. While Gargi and a few others found a place in the spiritual discourse, most women were indeed confined to roles that revolved around household duties and child-rearing. Yet, within these roles, they wielded significant influence, particularly in managing domestic rituals that ensured the household's prosperity. They might not have been leading the Agnihotra, but they were certainly crucial in its preparation. And let's not overlook the economic implications of these myths and roles. The divine narratives often reinforced the social order, which in turn dictated economic dynamics. The tales of Indra, for example, justified the resource allocations that favoured the warrior class. Meanwhile, the roles women played in domestic rituals often revolved around agricultural cycles and family prosperity, subtly highlighting their economic importance, even if it wasn't always acknowledged. So, as you lay there pondering the myths that shape your world, it's clear that these stories are more than mere entertainment. They're the threads that weave together the fabric of your society, binding spiritual beliefs with social and political realities. They offer comfort and justification, yes, but they also demand scrutiny and interpretation. As a Vedic priest, you're not just a participant in these myths, you're a custodian of their legacy, tasked with navigating the complex interplay of faith, power, and human nature. And while the romantic image of a serene, all-knowing priest might persist in some corners, the reality is that you're constantly walking a tightrope, a balancing act between the allure of divine tales and the gritty truths of daily life. It's a job that requires not just spiritual insight, but a keen eye for human behaviour and a knack for diplomacy that would make even the most seasoned politician nod in approval. With the afternoon sun casting long shadows, you feel the weight of these responsibilities, but also the thrill of the challenge. The myths are your tools, your weapons, and your burdens, all rolled into one. They define your role, but they also give you the latitude to shape it. And as you drift into the realm of dreams, you're keenly aware that tomorrow will bring new stories to tell, new truths to uncover, and new ways to bridge the gap between the divine and the mundane. So rest now, knowing that while the myths may be ancient, your role in interpreting them is ever-evolving. The legends that surround the Vedic priesthood are as much a part of your identity as the Rig Veda itself, offering both a guiding light and a shadowy challenge. And as the stars twinkle in the night sky, you're ready to embrace whatever comes next in this timeless dance of tradition and truth. And there you are, drifting into sleep, when you realize the myths aren't just bedtime stories for the ancient world. They're the threads that have woven their way into the very fabric of modern Hinduism. As you lay beneath the starlit sky, it's time to reflect on how the echoes of your Vedic chants ripple through the centuries. Let's start with the basics. The Vedic traditions laid down the foundations of Hinduism like the roots of a banyan tree, sprawling, complex, and surprisingly resilient. The Rig Veda, with its 1028 hymns, isn't just gathering dust on ancient shelves, it's still alive, its verses recited in ceremonies that mark life's milestones, from birth to death. These hymns, once your daily script, continue to influence rituals across the subcontinent. It's like Vedic priests left a spiritual blueprint that's been Xeroxed 1,000,000 times over. But what about the caste system, you ask? The Varna system, that social Rubik's Cube we talked about earlier. It's managed to hang around like an uninvited guest who's overstayed their welcome. The rigid divisions of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra have evolved, sure, but they've also left an indelible mark on social structures. Even today, caste can dictate everything from your job prospects to your marriage options in India. The system has been both a ladder and a cage, offering prestige to some and shackles to others. It's a complicated legacy that still fuels debates and reforms. Speaking of legacies, let's not forget the role of rituals. The Agnihotra, your daily fire ritual, has morphed into countless forms, adapting to modern life like a chameleon at a disco party. While the specifics might have changed, no more cow dung cakes in the city, thank you very much, the essence of maintaining cosmic balance remains. These rituals have a democratic charm. They've transcended the priestly class to become a personal spiritual journey for many Hindus today. It's like the Vedic priests democratized spirituality before the word democracy was even a twinkle in a philosopher's eye. And here's a fun twist. Those Vedic sacrifices, where you offered ghee and rice to the flames, they've evolved into a culinary culture that's as sacred as it is delicious. The concept of offering food to the divine before consuming it is still practiced today, known as prasada, a holy meal that feeds both the stomach and the soul. So next time you're savouring a plate of biryani, remember it's not just a dish, it's a legacy. But let's not romanticize the past without acknowledging the shadow it casts. The same Vedic texts that inspired devotion also justified rigid hierarchies. The priests, wielding the Rig Veda like a scepter, sometimes blurred the line between spiritual guidance and social control. The divine mandate often doubled as a political tool, shaping societal norms like a potter molds clay. It's a sobering reminder that the past, much like a well-crafted myth, is layered and complex. Now, let's zoom out and take a panoramic view. The Vedic traditions didn't just influence religious practices, they shaped cultural norms, art, music, and even language. Sanskrit, the language of the Vedas, became the lingua franca of the learned, a precursor to many modern Indian languages. It's like Latin, but with more panache, less Vatican. Even today, Sanskrit hymns are recited in temples, echoing your ancient chants and reminding everyone of a shared heritage that defies the ravages of time. And while we're on the topic of time, let's marvel at the staying power of these traditions. The Vedic priests, with their fire rituals and hymns, set in motion a cultural juggernaut that's still rolling along, gathering new influences and discarding others like a snowball down a mountain. The world has changed dramatically since your time, yet the core of Vedic wisdom, harmony, balance, and reverence for the cosmos remains relevant. It's as if the Vedic priests were the original life coaches, offering timeless advice that's as applicable today as it was thousands of years ago. So as your eyelids grow heavier, consider this. The Vedic priests were more than just keepers of tradition. They were architects of a legacy that continues to shape the world. They walked a tightrope between the divine and the mundane, crafting a narrative that has stood the test of time. And in doing so, they left us with a rich tapestry of myths, rituals, and philosophies that continue to inspire, challenge, and guide us. As you drift off, remember that history isn't just about dates and events, it's about the stories we tell and the lessons we learn. The Vedic priests, with their hymns and rituals, were storytellers of the highest order, weaving tales that transcend time and space. Their legacy is a reminder that while the world may change, the quest for meaning, balance, and connection remains eternal. So sleep well, knowing that you've been part of a journey that stretches back millennia, a journey that continues to unfold, carrying the echoes of the past into the boundless possibilities of the future. In a small corner of Pakistan, nestled between the majestic Hindu Kush mountains, lies the Swat Valley, a place that feels like someone took a postcard and brought it to life. During the 1990s, this picturesque setting was home to a young girl named Malala Yousafzai, who would grow up to become a global symbol of courage. But before the fame and the Nobel Peace Prize, there was simply Malala, a girl with an insatiable hunger for learning, living under circumstances that would make most of us bolt for the nearest airport. Malala's father, Jaudan Yousafzai, was a man on a mission, or perhaps, considering the odds, a wild goose chase. He believed in education like some people believe in horoscopes, with a kind of unwavering, blind faith. In a country where girls' education was often considered about as necessary as a chocolate teapot, Jaudan dared to dream otherwise. He envisioned a school where girls could learn and grow, a notion as radical as wearing socks with sandals in some circles. To understand Jaudan's audacity, we need to look at the swirling political and cultural stew of 1990s Pakistan. This was a time when the Taliban's influence was spreading faster than a cat video on social media. The group had a knack for making life absurdly difficult, especially if you happened to be female and interested in things like reading, writing, or existing in public. The Taliban decreed that girls' education was unnecessary, going so far as to destroy over 400 schools by 2012. It was a time when getting an education was like trying to keep a candle lit in a hurricane. Despite the unrelenting pressure, Jaudan pressed on. He founded the Kushal School in 1994, named after the Pashtun poet Kushal Khan Khattak, who, in an odd twist of fate, was also a proponent of women's rights centuries before it was cool. Jaudan's school was a beacon of hope, a rebel's flag in a storm of conformity. But running a school in Swat wasn't exactly a walk in the park. It was more like a trek through a minefield. The economic realities were daunting. For every rupee that trickled in, there were textbooks to buy, teachers to pay, and a building to maintain. In a region where the average annual income was about $650, asking families to pay for education was like asking them to buy a yacht. Textbooks, the essential building blocks of education, were treated like contraband. Getting your hands on a decent one was akin to finding a unicorn. They were expensive and often outdated, but you took what you could get. Sometimes, Zhao Din had to make do with donations from organizations that probably thought they were sending books to the ends of the earth. Each book represented a small victory in a larger battle against ignorance. Malala, growing up in this environment, absorbed her father's passion like a sponge. She attended his school and quickly became one of its brightest stars. But her love for learning wasn't just about acing exams or collecting gold stars. For Malala, education was freedom. It was a way to push back against the darkness threatening to engulf her world. Of course, any story worth its salt has its fair share of myths. Malala's tale is often romanticized, portrayed as a straightforward triumph over adversity. But the reality was far more complex. Her journey was fraught with peril, and at times the odds seemed insurmountable. The Taliban weren't just abstract villains from a fairy tale. They were real, they were armed, and they didn't take kindly to dissent. Yet, amidst the chaos, Malala's spirit remained unbroken. Her early life was a lesson in resilience, a masterclass in how to remain steadfast when the world insists on crumbling around you. In the face of oppressive regimes, schools closing their doors, and the constant threat of violence, Malala's determination to learn and her father's unwavering support provided a glimmer of light. Through it all, the Yousafzais held on to hope. They believed in the power of education to transform lives, to break the cycle of poverty and ignorance. And even as the Taliban tightened their grip, Malala continued to attend school, her resolve as unyielding as the mountains surrounding her home. In the end, the absurdity of the situation was inescapable. A girl in the Swat Valley, simply wanting to go to school, became a revolutionary act. It's a testament to the topsy-turvy world in which Malala grew up, where the mundane was made extraordinary by the sheer audacity of her dreams. Despite the seemingly insurmountable challenges, Malala's early years laid the groundwork for her future, setting the stage for a remarkable story of courage and defiance that would soon capture the world's attention. In the topsy-turvy world of the Swat Valley, where a young girl's dreams to attend school were considered revolutionary, the Taliban's influence spread like an inkblot on a pristine map. These folks arrived with their hardline dogma and a penchant for making sure everyone knew it. By the mid-2000s, they had transformed this picturesque valley into a stage for their medieval theatrics, with Malala Yousafzai unwittingly cast in the leading role. Let's rewind to 2007, a pivotal year when the Taliban, under the charismatic yet sinister leadership of Maulana Fazlullah, decided that Swat was their new playground. Fazlullah, who went by the charming moniker Radio Mullah, was a master of propaganda. He wielded his FM radio broadcasts like a medieval bard with a megaphone, spewing edicts that sounded more like badly scripted dystopian novels. His diatribes included everything from banning music and TV to declaring education for girls as unnecessary as a third sock. Living in Swat during this period meant navigating a minefield of fear and defiance. Daily life was a surreal blend of dodging potholes and ducking propaganda. It wasn't just about avoiding Fazlullah's sermons, it was about resisting the creeping dread that sought to strangle the very soul of the valley. Schools were attacked, and the echo of exploded buildings reverberated through the mountains. By 2009, over 400 schools had been demolished, a fact that would make even the most hardened cynic wince. Amidst this chaos, Malala's advocacy began to take shape. She was just 11 years old when she penned her first blog post for BBC Urdu under the pseudonym Gul Makai, a name that sounds like it belongs in a fairy tale but was actually a shield against the ever-watchful eyes of the Taliban. Her writings were a brave chronicle of life under the oppressive regime, shedding light on the darkness that the Taliban desperately tried to keep under wraps. Malala's words painted a picture of defiance, resilience, and the unyielding desire for education. Her blogging experience was a peculiar one. Imagine being a pre-teen, dodging bullets of not just the literal kind, but also the metaphorical ones, words that could land her family in grave danger. It was like playing a game of chess with invisible opponents who could strike at any moment. Her posts, which began in January 2009, were a mix of diary entries and rallying cries, crafted in the dim light of evening, with the shadows of fear lurking just outside her door. While Malala's pen was mightier than many swords, her voice soon found its way beyond the pages of her blog. She began to step onto the global stage, her speeches echoing with the same clarity and conviction that filled her written words. In 2011, when she was just 13, Malala was awarded Pakistan's first National Youth Peace Prize, a recognition that was as surreal as it was significant. Think about it, this girl, who couldn't even apply for a driving license, was being honoured with accolades that most adults only dream about. Malala's early public speaking engagements were a whirlwind of surreal moments. One day she was addressing the United Nations, and the next she was back in Swat, where the mountains had yet to be convinced of her celebrity status. Her speeches were filled with the kind of wisdom that seemed to defy her years, a testament to the extraordinary circumstances that had shaped her childhood. It's tempting to paint Malala's rise as a straightforward tale of triumph, but let's not kid ourselves. Her journey was fraught with peril, and the stakes were higher than a game of high-stakes poker. Each award and appearance came with its own set of dangers. The Taliban were not fond of dissenters, particularly those who threatened to unravel their carefully spun web of control. Malala was not just a voice. She was becoming a symbol of resistance, a beacon that drew attention, both welcome and dangerous. Through it all, Malala maintained her focus on the bigger picture. Her advocacy was not just about her own education, but about the rights of every girl in her valley, her country, and eventually, the world. She understood that her voice, amplified by the international stage, could shine a light on the injustices that millions faced. The economic realities of the time were harsh, to say the least. In a region where the annual family income was often less than the cost of a new smartphone, advocating for education was a Herculean task. But Malala's story, though extraordinary, was rooted in the simple belief that knowledge was the key to breaking the chains of poverty and oppression. As we leave this chapter of Malala's story, it's crucial to hold on to the duality of her experience, the myth and the reality, the legend and the human struggle. Her early years of advocacy were a testament to a spirit that refused to be silenced, a symbol of hope in a world that seemed determined to quash it. The stage was set, and Malala was ready to continue her journey, one that would capture the imagination of the entire world, even as it continued to unfold in the shadow of the Hindu Kush. As the sun rose over the Swat Valley on October 9, 2012, the day began like any other for Malala Yousafzai. Yet, by sunset, the world would know her name, not for her speeches or her blog, but for an unimaginable act of violence that would catapult her into global headlines. The day unfolded with a chilling inevitability, as if the universe had queued up a sinister plot twist in the story of this remarkable young girl. Malala, then 15, climbed aboard her school bus, a seemingly innocuous act that morphed into a moment of horror. As the bus wound its way through the valley, a masked gunman halted it. What happened next would echo around the world. He boarded, asked for Malala by name, and shot her at point-blank range. 2 of her friends were injured in the attack. The bullet struck Malala's head, travelled down her neck, and lodged in her shoulder, a trajectory that sounds more like something out of a grisly crime novel than real life. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Why would anyone target a schoolgirl? The Taliban, not known for nuance or restraint, saw her as a threat. Her advocacy for girls' education struck at the very heart of their oppressive ideology. In their twisted worldview, Malala wasn't just a girl with a backpack, she was the embodiment of defiance. The immediate aftermath was a chaotic blur of medical interventions. Malala was rushed to a military hospital in Peshawar, where surgeons worked with the kind of urgency usually reserved for ticking time bombs. Her life hung by a thread, yet the doctors managed to stabilize her enough for a transfer to the United Kingdom. The Pakistani government, realizing the political and symbolic weight of the situation, arranged for a specialized air ambulance, a gesture that carried as much diplomatic significance as it did medical necessity. Meanwhile, the global media circus had begun. News outlets from every corner of the globe descended upon the story with the fervour usually reserved for royal weddings or celebrity scandals. Malala was thrust into the limelight, her plight transformed into a narrative that mixed elements of a Hollywood blockbuster with a human rights documentary. The world watched in rapt attention, eager for updates on the girl who fought the Taliban. As Malala lay in a Birmingham hospital, the media crafted a narrative that oscillated between heroism and victimhood. Headlines lauded her bravery, while talk shows and op-eds dissected the implications of her story. But let's not romanticize this too much. Behind the headlines was a teenage girl grappling with severe injuries, far from home, trying to comprehend why her pursuit of education had led to such violence. The economic realities of Malala's situation were staggering. Her medical treatment alone was estimated to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Pakistani government promised to cover the expenses, a gesture that was as much about saving face internationally as it was about genuine compassion. But this was just the tip of the iceberg. As Malala's story gained momentum, the demand for her words and insights skyrocketed. Enter I Am Malala, her memoir, which hit the shelves in 2013. Co-authored with journalist Christina Lamb, the book quickly climbed bestseller lists, generating revenue that would make any young author's head spin. Here's a fun fact. By the time most of us were still figuring out the mysteries of high school algebra, Malala was a published author with a book deal that rivaled those of seasoned writers. The book's success was a testament to the power of Malala's story, but it also highlighted the often cynical intersection of tragedy and commerce. The world was hungry for a narrative of resilience, and Malala's story fit the bill perfectly. While the memoir sales brought in substantial income, they also underscored the economic disparity in the world's response to global crises. For every Malala who gains international support, countless others continue to fight in obscurity. Yet, Malala's influence extended beyond book sales and media coverage. Her story sparked a renewed focus on education as a fundamental human right. Donations poured into educational charities, and Malala's own non-profit, the Malala Fund, benefited from the heightened awareness. The fund aimed to ensure that girls around the world receive 12 years of free, safe, and quality education, a goal that was as ambitious as it was necessary. Despite the romanticized narrative swirling around her, Malala remained grounded in reality. Her recovery was a long, arduous process involving multiple surgeries and rehabilitation sessions. She faced each challenge with a stoicism that belied her years, but the journey was far from easy. Yet her spirit remained unbroken, reflecting an inner resilience that no bullet could shatter. As Malala's story continued to unfold, it served as a reminder of the power of education to challenge oppressive systems and transform societies. Her experience highlighted the absurdity of a world where advocating for basic rights could lead to violence. But it also showcased the extraordinary spirit of a young girl who dared to dream beyond the confines of her circumstances. In examining the complex tapestry of Malala's journey, we see the interplay of courage, adversity, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Her story is both a cautionary tale and an inspiring call to action, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. And while the world may have seen her as a symbol, Malala remained, at her core, a young girl who simply wanted to go to school. As we continue to explore the chapters of her life, let us remember both the legend and the reality, acknowledging the profound impact of her story on a world that is still learning how to listen. While the world may have seen her as a symbol, Malala remained, at her core, a young girl who simply wanted to go to school. As we continue to explore the chapters of her life, let us remember both the legend and the reality, acknowledging the profound impact of her story on a world that is still learning how to listen. From the bustling streets of Mingora to the quiet corridors of a Birmingham hospital, Malala's journey was nothing short of a cultural odyssey. Recovering from her injuries was a task demanding not just physical resilience, but also mental fortitude. Her new life in the UK was a bizarre mix of high-stakes advocacy and the daily grind of teenage life. Think of it as juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle on a tightrope. Malala was thrust into a whirlwind of international advocacy and public appearances, a schedule that would exhaust even the most seasoned of diplomats. Yet, this was a 15-year-old girl recovering from a gunshot wound. Her days were filled with speeches, interviews, and meetings with world leaders, all while grappling with the complexities of British weather, where rain seemed to have a personal vendetta against umbrellas. Now, let's talk logistics. Malala found herself enrolled at Edgbaston High School for Girls, an institution that was as much about blazers and A-levels as it was about adapting to a new world. For Malala, a typical day involved navigating the nuances of British culture, which included understanding why tea was treated like a national treasure and why taking the mickey wasn't an invitation to an amusement park. The academic challenges were real. A-levels, those daunting exams that had been known to strike fear into the hearts of the most diligent students, were now on Malala's horizon. Balancing schoolwork with her advocacy work was like trying to keep two plates spinning while someone throws in a third for good measure. And let's not forget the linguistic leap. Moving from Urdu to English in an academic setting is no small feat, especially when Shakespeare and calculus are thrown into the mix. Yet, Malala tackled these challenges with the same tenacity she had shown throughout her life. Her new classmates were initially in awe of her, a dynamic that must have made school feel like a strange mix of a celebrity meet and greet and a history lesson. But Malala's charm, humility, and wit soon made her just another student, albeit one who occasionally addressed the United Nations in her spare time. Speaking of the UN, let's pause to appreciate the irony. Malala, who had once been a target for daring to dream about education, was now addressing world leaders about the very topic that had put her life in danger. In July 2013, on her 16th birthday, she delivered a speech to the United Nations Youth Assembly, an event dubbed Malala Day in her honor. Here's the kicker. While most teenagers are thrilled to receive a new gadget or a gift card for their birthday, Malala received a global platform to advocate for education. Her speech was a masterclass in poise and conviction, delivered with a blend of humility and authority that belied her years. She called for books and pens to be the weapons of choice in the fight against ignorance and poverty, a sentiment that resonated around the world. The economic realities she highlighted were stark. 57 million children out of school globally, with girls facing the highest barriers. Malala was advocating for a world where education was a right, not a privilege, a vision as revolutionary as it was necessary. Of course, the media's portrayal of Malala as a near-mythical figure came with its own set of challenges. The narrative of the girl who fought the Taliban was both a blessing and a burden. While it amplified her message, it also risked overshadowing the very real human being behind the headlines. Malala was not just a symbol, she was a teenager navigating the complexities of adolescence in a foreign country. Let's not sugarcoat it. Being a global icon while trying to pass exams is a juggling act worthy of a circus. But Malala handled this duality with a grace that was both inspiring and humbling. Her ability to maintain a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos was a testament to her resilience and the support of her family, who had become an integral part of her new life in the UK. And speaking of family, let's not forget the Yousafzai's own cultural adjustments. Jordan, Malala's father, went from being a school principal in Swat to a global advocate for education, while her mother, Tua Pekai, learned English and navigated the cultural quirks of British life. Together, they formed a tight-knit unit, a source of strength and normalcy for Malala in a world that was anything but. The economic backdrop of Malala's story is as crucial as the personal one. While the world rallied around her cause, the harsh realities of funding education initiatives became apparent. The Malala Fund, established to champion education for girls, aimed to raise millions to support its mission. But let's face it, fundraising is more marathon than sprint, and the road is often littered with as many setbacks as successes. Yet, in the midst of these challenges, Malala's story continued to inspire. Donations poured in, not just from wealthy benefactors, but also from ordinary people moved by her courage. The fund supported projects in Pakistan, Nigeria, Kenya, and beyond, focusing on breaking down the barriers that kept girls out of school. It was a mission that echoed Malala's own journey, a testament to the power of perseverance in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. As Malala's advocacy continued to evolve, so did her understanding of the world. She met with everyone from Barack Obama to Queen Elizabeth II, each encounter a surreal blend of the formal and the personal. These meetings were more than photo opportunities. They were platforms to discuss serious issues, from drone strikes to the role of women in global politics. It was a heady mix of diplomacy and personal conviction, reinforcing Malala's role as a voice for change. Yet, amidst the whirlwind of public life, Malala remained grounded. Her story, while extraordinary, was rooted in the simple belief that education was a transformative force. It was a narrative that transcended borders, resonating with people from all walks of life. And as Malala continued her journey, she carried with her the hopes and dreams of millions, a symbol of what could be achieved when determination met opportunity. In wrapping up this chapter of Malala's story, it's clear that her journey is far from over. The challenges she faces are both personal and global, a reflection of the complex world we live in. Yet, through it all, Malala's unwavering commitment to education and equality remains a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the smallest voices can change the world. As we look to the future, Malala's story serves as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Her journey is a call to action, a challenge to each of us to fight for a world where every child, regardless of gender or geography, has the opportunity to learn and thrive. And while her story is still being written, one thing is certain: Malala Yousafzai will continue to inspire us all, one classroom at a time. While Malala's journey continued to unfold like chapters in a suspense novel, the world watched, captivated by the narrative of a girl who had gone from dodging Taliban bullets to addressing the United Nations. But let's not kid ourselves. Her life wasn't all about podiums and peace prizes. Malala was also navigating the minefield that is teenage life, complete with homework deadlines, social dynamics, and the occasional Netflix binge. Yes, even global icons need a break from saving the world. Fast forward to October 10, 2014. Picture it. A crisp autumn day in Birmingham, and Malala is sitting in a classroom, perhaps pondering algebraic equations or the nuances of Shakespeare, when she receives a phone call that would change the course of her life yet again. She was being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. At 17, she was the youngest recipient ever, sharing the prestigious honour with Kailash Satyarthi, an Indian children's rights activist. Talk about a plot twist. The Nobel Committee praised Malala for her struggle against the suppression of children and young people and for the right of all children to education. It was a sentence that could fit on a bumper sticker but carried the weight of centuries of inequality. The Nobel Prize came with a cool 1.1 million, a sum that could buy a small island or, more practically, fund a plethora of educational initiatives. Malala, however, had no interest in private islands or luxury yachts. The prize money was earmarked for the Malala Fund, her non-profit organisation dedicated to ensuring girls around the world receive 12 years of free, safe, quality education. The fund's mission was ambitious, targeting regions where education was a distant dream rather than a daily reality. Now, here's the thing about Nobel Prizes. They're as much about politics and diplomacy as they are about achievement. Malala's win was a double-edged sword, a celebration of her achievements, but also a stark reminder of the ongoing struggles for education equality worldwide. While the cameras flashed and headlines blared, millions of children remained out of school, their futures as uncertain as the weather in Birmingham. The economic realities were sobering. According to UNESCO, in 2014 alone, there were 58 million children of primary school age who were not in school, and over half of them lived in sub-Saharan Africa. The reasons were as varied as they were complex: poverty, cultural norms, political instability, and gender inequality. For every Malala who captured the world's imagination, there were countless others whose stories went untold, their struggles invisible to the global stage. Yet, what makes Malala's story resonate is not just the romance of a young girl defying the odds, but the harsh reality of what those odds truly entailed. Her narrative challenges us to look beyond the accolades and confront the systemic issues that keep millions of girls from classrooms. It's tempting to view her as a solitary hero in a sea of injustice, but the truth is she represents a collective struggle, a movement that is far from over. As Malala continued her advocacy, she did so with an understanding of the intricate tapestry of global politics. She met with world leaders, not just to shake hands and pose for photos, but to press for tangible change. Each meeting was an opportunity to raise awareness about the barriers to education, from Boko Haram's abductions in Nigeria to the constraints on girls' schooling in Afghanistan. The Malala Fund worked tirelessly to address these issues, launching initiatives that supported local educators and advocates, the unsung heroes in this ongoing battle for equality. And then there was the media circus. The narrative of Malala the myth was as pervasive as it was problematic. She was often portrayed as a saintly figure, a beacon of hope in a dark world. But the reality was far more nuanced. Malala was a young woman with dreams, insecurities, and a healthy appreciation for pop culture. Behind the Nobel laureate was a teenager who enjoyed watching shows like Friends and MasterChef, a reminder that even icons need a dose of normalcy. It's crucial to remember that while Malala's story is extraordinary, it is also a testament to the power of ordinary people to effect change. Her father, Jourdain, often remarked that if Malala was extraordinary, it was because the world had made her so by denying her the ordinary right to an education. In this sense, her story is as much about the collective failures of society as it is about individual triumph. So, where does that leave us? Malala's legacy is still being written, her journey a mosaic of victories and challenges. She continues to advocate for the rights of girls worldwide, using her platform to amplify the voices of those who might otherwise go unheard. Her story is a call to action, a reminder that while progress has been made, the road to equality is long and fraught with obstacles. As we wrap up this chapter of Malala's life, it's worth considering the duality of her existence. She is both a global icon and a young woman finding her place in the world. Her story invites us to question our narratives, to look beyond the headlines and see the real struggles and triumphs that lie beneath. Malala Yousafzai is a symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to the power of education to transform lives and societies. In the end, Malala's journey is a poignant reminder of the impact one voice can have in a world that often seems indifferent to the cries for justice. Her story is a beacon that challenges us to do better, to strive for a world where every child, regardless of gender or geography, has the opportunity to learn and grow. As we continue to follow her journey, let us carry forward the lessons of courage and tenacity inspired by a young girl from the Swat Valley who dared to dream of a better world.